We live in a world where information moves faster than ever. With just a swipe or a click, we get bombarded by whatever the algorithm decides to show us, just like you landing on this video. But have you ever thought about how much of that information is really just someone else's version of the truth? Whether it's news or online videos, we're often shown what others want us to see, while the full picture is hidden away. There's an old saying, there's your story, my story, and then there's the truth. And in today's world of instant information, we're usually only shown one side, leading to one of the biggest issues we face: misinformation. I bring this up because one video game director was already thinking about how fast misinformation could spread way back in the 90s. Of course, I'm talking about Hideo Kojima. So, let's rewind for a moment. It all started in 1987 with Metal Gear, a stealth game inspired by films. It became a hit in both Japan and the US, setting the stage for Kojima's career. A year later, he released the cyberpunk adventure Snatcher, giving us a glimpse of his version for the future, a game that mirrored Blade Runner and, interesting enough, Terminator. Then, in 1990, we get the unexpected sequel, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, though it didn't make its way to the US until 2004. After that, Kojima took us to space with Policenauts, exploring what life beyond Earth could be like. All these games helped him master the art of game design, leading to his opus at the time, Metal Gear Solid. That game dove deep into the idea of genes and questioning how much they define who we are versus what we choose to be. And through all these titles, there was a constant theme: technology. Kojima was always imagining the future of tech and, more importantly, how dangerous it could become if misused. Fast forward to 2001 and Kojima releases a game that takes a hard look at how AI and information control could change the world. And here we are today, living in an AI-driven world where his warnings feel more relevant than ever. Welcome back to the Retro Phantoms Retrospective. Today we're infiltrating the big shell, exploring the dangers of AI with Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you're interested in more of Kojima's work, I've covered a few of his other titles on the channel. Check out the Hideo Kojima Chronicles playlist to dive deeper into what led us here. And of course, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Let's dive into this. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my other Metal Gear videos along with Snatcher and Policenauts, as the history is connected with the history in this video. So let's begin. The development history of Metal Gear Solid 2 began in 1999 when Hideo Kojima completed the game plan for the sequel. This game plan was later made available in the document of Metal Gear Solid 2, initially released in Japanese. Thankfully, it was translated into English in 2006, giving fans a deeper understanding of how this groundbreaking game came to life. Much of the information I'll share is derived from the document of MGS2 and its detailed game plan. It's no surprise that the success of the original Metal Gear Solid would lead the way for a sequel to be made. The first game immediately became a massive hit upon release, garnering immense critical acclaim and numerous accolades, such as the Excellence Award trophy and the Golden Prize plaque at the 1999 PlayStation Awards. So with both critical and commercial success in the bag, a follow-up was initially given. Work on the sequel began in October 1998, when Kojima and his inner circle started brainstorming ideas for the next project. Early on, they decided the game's setting would be Manhattan Bay. The initial game plan was unveiled to the wider Konami staff by late November, and Kojima wasted no time in moving things along. By December 1998, he had a planning outline, which was the basis for designing the game. In January 1999, he completed his first draft of the game document. According to early plans, Metal Gear Solid 2 was going to be sold under the name of Metal Gear Solid 3, with the 3 written in Roman numerals. This unconventional meaning was a deliberate move by Kojima to make fans raise their eyebrows. Why is it 3 and not 2? The reasoning behind this choice was linked to the setting, Manhattan, and the 3 tallest skyscrapers that defined its silhouette at the time. Around the same time, Yoji Senkai started doing character sketches and playing around with toon shading for the look of the game. The development team aimed for a wide audience, focusing on middle school students, independent adults, and essentially male players. They did not, however, forget about female players. This led to the development of Raiden as a protagonist, a more feminine-friendly character whose role wasn't revealed until the release of the game. Owing to the massive success that surrounded Metal Gear Solid, this title received a $10 million budget. A step back to consider the wider landscape of gaming at the time, this was the transformative era. The industry was moving from the 5th generation to the 6th generation of consoles. Sega had already ushered in this new generation with the Dreamcast, and Sony was preparing to follow up with their highly anticipated PlayStation 2. Before the PS2's official announcement, the MGS2 team met with Sony where the console specifications were revealed. This sparked Kojima's imagination, particularly regarding how the game could leverage the hardware's enhanced capabilities. With the PS2 more advanced graphics and processing capabilities, Kojima could finally achieve many things that weren't possible on the PS1. The document of MGS2 states, "We will be able to implement with the PlayStation 2 several features that previously had to be taken out due to shortcoming in processing capabilities. Where in the previous game only 4 to 5 enemies could be on screen at any given time, now we will be able to display up to a maximum of around 300 enemies on screen at a time, driving up to epic proportions the tension the player will feel when discovered. We will be able to create using in-game graphics battle scenes like of which are seen in Starship Troopers and Mulan. The opening, middle, and finale of the game will feature the maximum number of enemies on screen simultaneously." This bold vision for the sequel not only showcased Kojima's creativity, but also brought forward the team's urge to push the limits of what could actually be done in a game at that time. Having sketched out the story for the game plan, a lot of research for design inspiration was required. There were a series of trips organized by the Konami team. One of the places they visited was a container ship on which they closely observed its design and functions. This study became highly influential in designing the tanker level of the game, demonstrating great attention to detail. Since the setting of the game is New York, the team also took a trip across the ocean to the United States to see Los Angeles and most importantly, New York City. It was in New York that so much of the visual inspiration for the game came from. Kojima carefully designed the setting with the inclusion of key bridges and landmarks into the game world. The team's tour of the city, as shown through video footage, was both enlightening and entertaining. Kojima himself spent 3 days in New York immersing himself in the environment to refine his vision for the game. The team made the most of their limited time, capturing the essence of the city and translating into the game's visual and atmosphere. By June, Kojima finally received the tools for Sony's PlayStation 2, giving him access to the hardware needed to bring his vision to life. Motosada Mori, a special military tactics and combat expert, was brought to help develop the espionage aspects of the game. He worked very closely with the team and demonstrated exactly how guards will patrol, hold their weapons, and conduct themselves during an operation. He also provided great detailed close quarters combat demonstrations, offering practical insight into takedown. This practical lecture took 2 whole days and was truly worth the gold. Behind the scenes footage shows how this knowledge was absorbed by the team and applied to create realistic enemy behaviors and animations. The collaboration with Mori exemplified Kojima's commitment to authenticity, ensuring that every detail down to the guard movements felt believable in the final product.
警察、突入、狙撃、あと警戒。よくみんな映画とかでよくやってるけど、部屋入ってきてやってるけど、あれはやらないよ。やるのは目線だけ。何かあったらすぐパッと。でここで手で引っ掛けてくる。これでここで膝。でこれを1回で何度もやってそのまま倒す。こう開くわけやろ。こうということが見えていくのはこっちから順番にこう見えていくわけでしょ。なんでこっちに入るこっちに入る決める必要があるの。肩をつける。そうすると一番この人間はよしもう後ろにバックアップがいるんだっていうのが分かる。これがまず基本体制。入る。お前に持ってない。入ってきた。何でお前はって話になるわな。どうすんの。人質救出作戦。ここに H ホテルホステージがいる。4人チームで今から15分後に突入。基本的に重要なチームワーク、お互い信用しなかったら話にならないんだよ。どんな作戦があれどういうのもいけるわね、行こうと問題なのはお互いこの4人でチームで意見が統一できてるかできてないだよ。それが重要。
Now, further along the timeline is September 13th, and the announcement of the PlayStation 2 steals the show and captures the attention of the gaming world and wonder at what this new technology promises. Meanwhile, development for Metal Gear Solid 2 is still in full swing, though the game has yet to be revealed to the world. Looking at the game plan, it seems Kojima had in mind a new definition of what a sequel could be. He and his team set out to create a standalone experience that would be welcoming to newcomers while offering plenty for fans of the original game. Kojima used the relationship between Silent Hill and Silent Hill 2 as a reference, trying to achieve something that was close enough to the first but will also be independent. It will carry over the entirely same world, characters, game system, and story seen in the previous game, interweaving all of those components while helping new players into the game, Kojima said. In that sense, we will go for a true type of sequel not found in other games. This philosophy allowed new players with no prior knowledge of the series to jump into the story, but it also came with a risk. Longtime fans would feel let down if they wanted more direct continuity or returning characters. During the development, the team pushed the PlayStation 2 hardware to its limits, prioritizing realism in both gameplay and design. Enemy AI was a major focus, with the goal of creating lifelike adversaries who had unique personalities and behaviors. For instance, the team wanted fallen enemy soldiers to remain in the environment rather than disappearing, encouraging players to think strategically about their actions. The team also wanted to build more immersive environments, adding real-time shading techniques and creating natural elements, such as the realistic rain and water effects in the game, helping bring the world to life. These innovations highly elevated the stealth gameplay, since enemies now operate in squads, communicate more effectively, and react intelligently to player actions. Here's an interview clip of Kojima talking about the game itself.
Hideo Kojima is now back in Japan hard at work, but he took a short break to give PlayStation Underground subscribers an exclusive inside look at the game. The response to Metal Gear Solid 2 at E3 was well beyond our expectations. And while we are very happy, it's also a little scary. We're going to spend the next year creating the game, and we're using the high expectations as a positive source of tension. Does anything we've created yet exceed my expectations? No. While working with hardware and human limitation, we're trying our best to create a game that is as close as possible to the vision I have imagined in my mind. Although I don't know what will happen later, right now it's not something that has exceeded that image yet. But when the game is completed, and many different people play what is closest to the game I have imagined, they take it beyond my own imagination. That's what's fun about games. What's our biggest challenge? To capture what gamers want in a sequel. It is not easy to find out what they want, or what series features they like the most. Secondly, the fact that we're developing on a new platform, the PlayStation 2, offers a challenge. The series could evolve many different ways on the PS2, but what evolutions will gamers be comfortable with? They want features they liked in the previous game, yet we still have to create surprises too. We've been working with the military advisor, Motasada Mori. He's given us advice on how to use and carry different weapons, and he contributed to improving the game's enemy AI. He was valuable in teaching us troop formation, especially clearing. We practiced his formation ourselves, and that helped us put it into the game realistically. People notice how much detail we put in the game and wonder what details we have to leave out. My main goal is to create atmosphere. Therefore, human figures, including both Snake and the enemies, are rather simplified. Also, low-priority background objects are simplified. The calculating power saved there will be allocated to factors like rain splatters, wind, and headbands that help create atmosphere. Our art team leader is Yuji Shinkawa. I met him 6 years ago right after I graduated college. He is amazing because he's young and his art style is so passionate, yet his lines are very mature, like someone who's been in the business for decades. He also comes up with many innovative ideas. I'll throw him a couple character concepts, and he will throw them back to me with a bunch of unexpected twists and surprises.
As in the previous series, I'm the character and mechanics designer. Because we're making a sequel, I thought our challenges would be easier than in the previous game, but now I'm finding them more difficult. I'm working through trial and error. With the new PlayStation 2 hardware, I need to incorporate more details in the art and think more about the settings. We still have a ways to go, but I hope everyone's looking forward to this game.
When I make a game, I want it to have a message or theme that I can communicate through the dozens of hours that users play the game. It's very difficult to communicate something while the user is playing the game and so much information is being processed at once. With Metal Gear Solid 2, I'd like to explore how our digital era will evolve and the effects it might have on us. To do that, I'm using a digital medium. Will there be a third Metal Gear Solid? Others may be able to plan a series in advance and figure out each sequel. But I'm the type of person who wants to do everything now and put everything I can into what I'm currently working on. I'm creating the game without thinking about Metal Gear Solid 3. I want to put everything that would go into the third series into the second one.
久しぶりだな、兄弟。お前は、そう、俺だよ。
In late January 2000, the Metal Gear Solid 2 team began utilizing motion capture to bring their ambitious project to life. After 17 days of intense work, they were able to produce a demo that demonstrated the game's potential to Konami and international stakeholders. With momentum on their side, MGS2 made its official announcement on May 10th, 2000 at a special premiere event held at Universal Studios. The game was publicly announced the next day at E3 in Los Angeles, which created huge hype.
I stare at the stars and the sky up above.
こちらスネーク、聞こえるか、オタコン。あ、僕だよスネーク、聞こえる。待たせたな。スニークポイントに到着。シャドウモセス事件の後、メタルギアの技術情報がブラックマーケットで密売されたよね。それで全世界にメタルギアの亜種が拡散した。今や核武装国にとってメタルギアは特別な兵器ではない。今回の新型はそれらに対抗するために設計されたものらしい。俺たちは新型メタルギアが極秘裏に輸送されるという情報を掴んだ。今思えば疑うべきだった。シャラシャアシカたちが降下した。これから私も戦争内へ向かう。そっちはどうだ。
さと共に沈め。
With anticipation for MGS2 building, Konami took advantage of the hype with an ingenious marketing move. Another of their games entitled Zone of the Enders was scheduled to hit store shelves in March 2001. In order to promote the sales of that game, Konami had announced that MGS2 would be shipped with a playable demo when one purchased Zone of the Enders. This demo consisted of the first part of the famous tanker chapter, where we can get a feel of the game up to its first boss fight. It achieved two big things. Proof of concept. It assured gamers that the stunning graphics and moments of gameplay we're seeing in the trailers were indeed not pre-rendered or hyperbolic, but very much possible on the PS2 hardware. 2. Demonstrating the potential of gameplay. It showcased innovative mechanics, interactivity with environments, and a balance between storytelling and player freedom. It worked, since many fans purchased Zone of the Enders simply to get a hold of the MGS2 demo. By that time, fans were already counting down the days until the game's full release in November 2001. The excitement with the demo seemed like nothing could derail Metal Gear Solid 2, until September of 2001 saw tragedy strike. The horrific events of 9/11 deeply affected Kojima, who considered canceling the game altogether. He took somber discussions with executives at Konami and shared with them his belief that the release would be insensitive given the state of the world. He even considered resigning from Konami, stating, "The game shouldn't be released at this period in time. I have no other choice but to take responsibility and resign from the company." Convinced by his inner circle, he finally did, but the project had to be heavily altered. Over 300 revisions were made to avoid drawing parallels with that real-world tragedy. Several major scenes were revisited. The crashing of Arsenal gear into Manhattan was axed, as well as collapsing buildings in the city. The original ending, involvement of a tanker crashing into Manhattan, was axed. These changes delayed the release by a few weeks. In the end, despite what transpired, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty hit the market on November 13, 2001. A success story against bad circumstances, it became a legacy as remembered to this day by the devotion of Hideo Kojima and his team.
本日をもちましてメタルギアソリッド2の動作チェックを終了いたします。お疲れ様でした。終了報告書とチェック終了報告書来ましたので、日本版無事終了ということです。あとプルーフがありますけども、とりあえずは制作も終了ということで、お疲れ様です。乾杯！
Here's a quick spoiler alert. As I'm about to tell the story behind Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, there will be light spoilers from Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, as well as Metal Gear Solid. If you're not a fan of spoilers, please advance this video to the gameplay overview section as seen on the timeline below. Let's dive into this. After the crazy events at Shadow Moses in 2005, the United States government tried to sweep everything under the rug. Snake, Otacon, Mei Ling, and Natasha Romanenko were having none of that cover-up nonsense. They decided to form their own rebel group called Philanthropy. Their mission? To uncover the shady development of new Metal Gear models, gather evidence that these things even existed, and then take them down before they were completed, often by blowing themselves to smithereens. Natasha wrote this explosive autobiography called In the Darkness of Shadow Moses, the unofficial truth to expose what really went down. But she had a hell of a time getting it published without heavy censorship. That is, until an anonymous source, probably Snake himself, leaked it to a journalist who didn't mince words. With the cat out of the bag, Natasha's unabridged book hit the shelves as a bestseller. She donated all the profits to keep Philanthropy's wheels spinning. The United Nations gave them a nod of recognition, but as Snake put it, they were still fringe operators with a bounty on their heads. During one of their ops, Snake and Otacon even went as far as stealing Liquid's frozen corpse from a shady facility. Around mid-2007, Philanthropy got a hot tip about a shady new Metal Gear codenamed Ray. Word on the street was that the Marines were transporting this amphibious anti-Metal Gear beast aboard a disguised oil tanker called the USS Discovery through the New York harbor. The intel came from none other than EE, Otacon's own sister, but they had another motive too, getting the inside scoop on this shadowy Patriots group that they've been tracking. So Snake did what he does best, a stealth insertion straight out of an action movie. He bungee jumped from the George Washington Bridge onto the Discovery's deck as it cruised along the Hudson. Only his camouflage took a beating in the impact, forcing him into cover. Snake's mission? Snap some photos of the new Metal Gear to prove to the world these things were still lurking in the shadows. A simple recon op to expose the truth.
The mission objective is to make visual confirmation of the new Metal Gear being transported by that tanker and bring back photographic evidence. But I want you first to go up to the top level of the infrastructure, to the bridge. We need to find out where the tanker is headed.
A little reconnaissance, huh?
There's too much we don't know about this new prototype. Capabilities, deployment method. We don't even know how close it is to completion. If we know where the testing arena is, I can start to draw some reasonable conclusions.
All right, I'll head to the bridge ASAP.
Try to avoid confrontations. Our goal is to collect evidence on Metal Gear development and expose it to the world. It would be best if you could get out of there without alerting anyone.
Don't worry, I know the drill. We're not terrorists.
Very good. Don't you forget that you're part of Philanthropy now, an anti-Metal Gear organization and officially recognized by the UN.
Recognized, but still fringe, Otacon.
Snake checked his gear, ready to snap some pics of Ray and get out, but he had a bad feeling about this op from the jump. Otacon assured him they'd rendezvous at the Verrazano Bridge when it was done. But then all hell broke loose. Out of nowhere, Russian mercs started pouring onto the deck, taking the Marines completely by surprise. These guys were silent but deadly, dropping bodies left and right. Snake figured they were after the same Metal Gear prize. He managed to snap a photo of the merc leader and sent it to Otacon for ID. Despite the hairy situation, Snake pushed forward to the bridge. He needed to find out just where the ship was being taken.
We need to get a fix on who they are.
Judging by their transport, aren't they some kind of military commandos?
Not necessarily. It could be the KA-62, the civil model.
Look, Snake, all we need is the photographic evidence of Metal Gear. As long as we have those, we can put it online and blow the whole thing wide open. So no pyrotechnics, okay?
All right, I'll do my best.
This isn't like Shadow Moses. Reach me if anything happens. The frequency's 141.12.
How can I check in and save my progress?
I'll do it. There's a frequency set aside for it, 140.96. Sorry, but no Mei Ling this time. Call me on the codec when you want to save.
Got it.
I'll be waiting just past the Verrazano Bridge. You need to be off that ship by then.
I'll be in touch.
Snake slipped past the mercs and made his way to the bridge. That's where he found the ship's coordinates. -35 degrees longitude, 58 degrees latitude. Way past the Bermudas. Otacon crunched the numbers and realized this was no ordinary test run. They were over 500 miles outside the Second Fleet's range, which could only mean one thing. Ray was already combat ready and operating solo, completely off Uncle Sam's leash, before Snake could sneak down and ID the Metal Gear. A huge crash stopped him in his tracks. He went to investigate and came face to face with the merc leader's very pregnant daughter, Olga Gorlukovich. She was refusing to abandon ship. An intense firefight broke out on the bridge. Despite her condition, Olga was one tough Russian woman, but Snake managed to take her down with tranq rounds. Just when he thought he was in the clear, a stray Cypher UAV drone snapped a photo of him blowing his cover wide open.
Cypher!
Otacon finally ID'd the merc leader as none other than Sergei Gorlukovich. Turns out Emma Emmerich, Otacon's stepsister, was the one who tipped them off about this Ray thing in the first place. Snake fought his way through Gorlukovich's goons towards the cargo hold where the Marines were gathered. That's when Otacon dropped another bombshell. someone was eavesdropping on their codec calls. Realizing they'd been compromised, Otacon set up a new plan. Instead of sending the raid photos over the codec, Snake would have to upload them from a terminal in the hold itself.
All right.
There's actually one little thing.
Just spit it out. I'm used to things going wrong.
It looks like someone's monitoring our transmission.
Who?
I don't have a clue. All they're doing is watching. It would creep me out less if they tried to interfere with our communications.
Could it have something to do with that cipher we saw?
Maybe.
Snake uploaded the raid photos to Otacon without a hitch, but as Marine bigwig wrapped up his rah-rah speech, the situation took a crazy turn. The one and only Revolver Ocelot rolled in, revealing he was working with Sergei Galukovich all along. Sergei had the Commandant trapped at gunpoint, spilling his plan to sell Ray to Russia to make the motherland great again. But then Ocelot dropped a bombshell. He had his own twisted agenda for Metal Gear. Sergei thought he was still taking orders from Solidus, but Ocelot announced his true masters, the Patriots. The Commandant was shell-shocked, referring to the Patriots as the La Li Lu Lay Lo, like it was some mystical cult. Before anyone could blink, Ocelot turned on Sergei in a blaze of bullets, taking out the Commandant and 4 of Sergei's men too.
Damn you!
Sergei, looks like you were long overdue for retirement.
Traitorous dog!
In a startling turn of events, the facade of Revolver Ocelot cracked, his right arm convulsing in a violent spasm as if possessed by a malevolent force. His voice twisted and contorted, echoing with the sinister cadence of Liquid Snake, a specter from the past, haunting his very being. The truth unraveled like a thread, revealing the source of Ocelot's transformation, a new limb gifted to him in the wake of the Shadow Moses incident, the arm of his fallen nemesis, Liquid Snake. With each passing moment, the lines between man and machine blurred, as Liquid Spirit entwined with Ocelot's consciousness, driving him to the brink of madness. In a chilling display of dominance, Liquid seized control, his taunts cutting through the air like a razor's edge. He spoke of time's relentless march, of morality's icy grip, and of his own escape from his clutches, made possible by the vessel of Ocelot's transplanted arm. With Ocelot under his thrall, Liquid commandeered Ray, unleashing its devastating power upon the sinking tanker. The vessel buckled and groaned beneath the onslaught, its hull torn asunder by the relentless barrage of hydro cannons and cataclysmic symphony of destruction that claimed the lives of countless soldiers and seemingly sealed the fate of Solid Snake.
Proceeding as planned, sir. location we discussed. Yes, I have photographic evidence of Snake on the scene. The cipher was most useful. I look forward to tomorrow morning's news flash. I would say the Marine Corps' plans are on indefinite hold. Yes, of course, Mr. President.
2 years later, on April 29, 2009, a terrorist group called the Sons of Liberty took over the Big Shell during a routine inspection. This group was made up of Dead Cell, a former Special Forces unit, and some Russian private army members. And get this, they were supposedly led by Solid Snake himself. The terrorists grabbed nearly 30 hostages, including the 44th president, James Johnson, who was there for the inspection. They demanded a whopping $30 billion and threatened to blow up the Big Shell if they didn't get it. This wouldn't just cause a massive explosion. It would ignite the crude oil in the Manhattan harbor and burn the chlorides used in the cleanup, creating deadly dioxins. It would be an environmental disaster of epic proportions. Foxhound sent in new soldier codenamed Snake to rescue the president and other hostages. As Snake started his underwater infiltration from the Hudson River, he found a freshly cut hole in the Big Shell's oil fence. He slipped through the deep sea dock of Strut A, Shell 1, and radioed his commanding officer, the colonel, about a possible intruder. That's when things got interesting. The colonel decided to change Snake's codename to Raiden. He was surprised because Raiden was supposed to be the only one using that route. But orders are orders, so Raiden was told to proceed with caution with a quick rundown of his skull suit's stealth features.
That's not possible.
What about SEAL Team 10?
They landed on the roof of the Big Shell as planned. And by the way, Snake, we're changing your code name for all following communication.
What's wrong with Snake?
Just a precaution. You are now designated Raiden.
As Raiden was about to leave the area, he heard a scuffle behind a hatch. Opening it, he saw a guard picking himself up off the floor and heading in the opposite direction. Following the guard, Raiden saw another sentry get thrown out of the elevator, knocking him out cold. He then spotted the body of the first guard he saw. In the chaos, Raiden caught a glimpse of someone behind the closing elevator doors. This confirmed it. There was another intruder on the Big Shell.
Colonel, there's definitely another intruder in here besides me.
That's not a possibility.
Not a team. Looks like a solo job.
One man.
We may not know who he is, but he managed to take care of every sentry in the area. They're all out cold. Whoever he is, he's got some skills.
We need to get an ID, but for now, you can take advantage of the situation and get to work.
The colonel directed Raiden to a computer node that would give him access to the Big Shell's network, but then he dropped a bombshell. He had handpicked the perfect system analyst for this op, none other than Raiden's girlfriend, Rosemary. Raiden was not thrilled about this at all. He reluctantly agreed to let Rose help, but only as an analyst and nothing more. Rose made it clear to the colonel that she would only follow orders directly related to her duties, no exceptions. Once Raiden accessed the node and bypassed security with his nanomachines, he pulled up the dock structural map. This activated his fancy Soliton radar system. With the guards starting to come, Raiden had to move fast. He called the elevator and hid until it arrived, boarding cautiously to avoid detection. Making his way up to the rooftop, he ditched the rest of his diving gear.
The terrorists call themselves Sons of Liberty.
Sons of Liberty?
The name of their leader is Solid Snake.
The hero of Shadow Moses? So that's why you changed my code name.
Right, but he can't be the Solid Snake. He died 2 years ago on that tanker after he blew it sky high.
Could he have survived?
Not a chance.
With intel from the colonel that the president was being held on Strut B with SEAL Team 10's Alpha Team, Raiden was extra cautious sneaking through the first few struts. He had to play this one by the book, but just as he reached the bridge connecting struts A and B, the colonel intercepted a transmission from the Alpha Team commander. They located the president, but before they could extract him, some mysterious force attacked. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Raiden and the colonel in the dark as they knew that Alpha Team was in deep trouble over on Strut B. So when Raiden stepped into the transformer room in Strut B, he was met with a gruesome sight. Alpha Team's bodies were everywhere, and the president was missing. The culprit, none other than Vamp, this eerie vampire-like guy from Dead Cell. He ambushed and wiped out almost the entire team. Raiden was in serious trouble, and he would have been next if it wasn't for Iroquois Pliskin, the lone survivor from SEAL Team 10, who swooped in to save him. Pliskin filled Raiden in on Vamp's background and the twisted origins of Dead Cell. He also handed Raiden a Soakum pistol and casually dropped the bomb that he knew Raiden was with Foxhound, even though that unit had been disbanded 4 years earlier.
Are you a Navy SEAL? How did you get in?
Fast rope descent from a Navy chopper.
Have I seen you before?
That suit. Are you Foxhound?
That's right.
Foxhound was disbanded. Huh? Where were you before Foxhound? Delta Force?
When Raiden reached the BC connecting bridge, he stumbled upon Bravo Team. They had Dead Cell leader Fortune surrounded, and she had the president with her. The SEALs opened fire, but here's the crazy part. Every single bullet veered away from her, and even the grenades refused to explode near her. It was like she had some kind of supernatural luck. Raiden, seeing how pointless it was to intervene and under orders to stay hidden, decided to hang back. Then, Fortune unleashed her man-portable railgun and wiped out all the Bravo team members, blowing up the bridge on the Shell 1 core and sending the SEALs plummeting to their depths. After that, Fortune and Vamp took the president and the football into the core.
Come, put me out of my misery.
This is impossible. Nothing will hit her. Is she the one they call Fortune?
Queen.
Don't let them take the president! Ready grenades! A dud!
Today is another bad day. Is there anyone here that can give me happiness?
Raiden got a codec call from the colonel with some serious updates. Both SEAL helicopters had been shot down by a Harrier, and it turns out the SEAL's assault was just a distraction to cover Raiden's infiltration. The colonel also mentioned they had intel about C4 explosives planted all over the Big Shell facility. With a new mission to help disarm these explosives, Raiden met up with bomb disposal expert Peter Stillman and once again Lieutenant J.G. Pliskin in Strut C. Stillman dropped a bombshell, no pun intended, that dead cell member Fat Man was actually one of his students, and his best one at that. He also mentioned that an engineer, the security systems architect for the Big Shell, had entered the facility with him to help SEAL Team to navigate through the security measures. Since Stillman had a leg injury and needed a walking stick, they decided he should stay put for safety, so Raiden and Pliskin split up to tackle the C4 planted by Fat Man across Shells 1 and 2.
You stay here.
No, I'm going.
The two of us can handle it, don't worry.
But...
You'll just slow us down with that leg of yours. There's a war going on here. I don't have time to babysit anymore.
Why don't you just let us handle the grunt work? You can tell us what to do over the radio, like in the original mission plan.
All right. I'll give you instructions from here. I may also need to prepare a backup plan just in case.
In case of what?
Good luck to both of you. This is a dangerous one.
Who dares, wins.
If anything comes up, let me know. My frequency is 140.25.
Good luck, kid. I'll see you later. Semper Fi.
But just when Raiden thought they had disarmed all the bombs, Stillman, now up and about, dropped some shocking news. Turns out all those baby C4s they had been disarming were just distractions. The real bombs were hidden in the lower levels of Strut A and H, and they were powerful enough to destroy the entire Big Shell if they went off. The twist, the real bombs were set to activate only after all of the decoys were disarmed. Raiden managed to disarm the bomb in Strut A, but by the time he got back to the deep sea dock, it was too late. The Strut H bomb exploded. Tragically, Stillman didn't make it.
Pliskin, get away from Strut H as fast as you can. Pete! Raiden! Keep your distance. Use the spray from as far away as possible.
Me?
You can do it. I know that.
I'm not so sure.
But I am. Do it. I know you can.
Just as Raiden was about to leave Strut A, he ran into Fortune, who seemed surprised to see him. She was expecting someone else. Still, she hinted that he might be the one to finally bring her death. She then attacked Raiden, causing massive destruction with her railgun. Raiden couldn't land a hit and had to focus on dodging her attacks instead. In the midst of this chaos, Raiden got a call from Campbell with a message from Fat Man: head to the heliport on Strut E or another bomb will go off, taking down the entire facility. Before Raiden could act, Vamp showed up to inform Fortune about Fat Man's betrayal. Seeing his chance, Raiden tried to shoot Fortune again, but his bullets were deflected, hitting Vamp instead right in the forehead and lower chest. Fortune was devastated, cradling Vamp and lamenting that she couldn't die with him. Raiden used this distraction to escape, but in a shocking twist moments later, Vamp woke up completely unfazed by what should have been fatal wounds.
Later, Vamp.
Now! Damn!
Vamp. Are you gone? No. No, that death was meant for me. Why am I the only one that can't die? Alone again? Cheated out of death again? How long will you force me to live? How much longer, Dad? You've punished me enough. I thought you could give me peace. But you couldn't kill me either.
There's no need for sorrow, Queen. I died once already.
Damn.
I can't die twice.
With the bomb's countdown already ticking, Raiden rushed to the heliport and managed to neutralize the explosive. But then he ran into Fat Man, who had a surprising confession. He didn't care about Dead Cell or the Sons of Liberty's goals. He didn't even know about the 30 billion ransom demands. Fat Man's only dream was to outshine his former mentor, Peter Stillman, and become the most notorious bomber in history by blowing up the entire Big Shell. He then challenged Raiden to stop him and started planting more explosives all over the area, showing off his impressive speed. Raiden had to juggle defusing each bomb with coolant spray while also fighting Fat Man. It was intense, but Raiden's determination paid off. Fat Man eventually collapsed from his injuries, but not before telling Raiden that he still hadn't disarmed the biggest bomb in the place. After Fat Man passed away, Raiden found that the final bomb hidden right beneath Fat Man's body.
The party's over for you.
That's what you think.
What do you mean? What did you just do? What is this?
I have beautiful hands. These delicate hands can craft works of art.
Answer me, what the hell is this?
It's the switch for the biggest bomb in the entire place.
Huh?
No use. Once it's activated, there's no stopping the count.
Where did you plant it? Where is it?
Somewhere in this area. Don't worry, it's very close by.
Where is it?
Go ahead, shoot me, I'm already dead.
Damn!
Think you can find it? When it goes off, it'll take the big shell with it.
Tell me where I can find the bomb!
That's your problem. This is the highlight of the party. Bring it on, I say. They'll be happy too. I die here and start my legend. Too bad you won't be around to see the movies. Laugh and grow fat.
With the bomb threat neutralized, the colonel made it clear the hostages, including the president, were still in grave danger. Pliskin chimed in, saying the only way to rescue them was by chopper extraction. As Raiden prepared to locate the president, he was confronted by a mind-blowing sight. The cyborg ninja, an exoskeleton-clad soldier wielding a lethal sword. This mysterious figure dropped some crazy intel. Apparently, a Secret Service agent named Richard Ames knew the president's location but was being held hostage in the Shell 1 core. The ninja provided Raiden with an enemy uniform to infiltrate the area undetected. But it wouldn't be that simple. The ninja warned of 3 major obstacles once inside. 1. The elevator was guarded by a pressure-sensitive camera requiring BDU to bypass. 2. Ames had a pacemaker, so Raiden needed a sound amplifier to locate his unique heartbeat signature without arousing suspicion. And 3, the hostage room had a biometric scanner, forcing Raiden to coerce a guard to open it. Then came the real bombshell. The terrorists had access to a nuke since the nuclear football was brought onto the big shell by a Navy captain. But the ninja revealed this was no ordinary decontamination facility. It was housing a new Metal Gear model. With that mind-bending truth bomb, the ninja provided a cell phone for future communication and vanished, leaving Raiden to piece together this insane conspiracy.
What's this for?
You might be glad you have it. Keep the controller's vibration function on.
What do I need a cell phone for?
When Raiden finally found Ames in the shell on court, Ames revealed that they were both working for the same people. He told Raiden where the president was being held in the Shell 2 core and dropped some major bombshells. The tanker accident and oil spill 2 years ago were planned, and the big shell was built specifically for developing Metal Gear. Ames explained that the president must be helping the terrorists willingly, as his vital signs were the biometric password needed to activate the nuke and the new Metal Gear. Their conversation was cut short when Ocelot and someone who looked like Solid Snake showed up. Using a directional microphone, Raiden eavesdropped on them and found out they were planning to establish Outer Haven. When Raiden mentioned the 30 billion ransom, Ames clarified there was no real threat or ransom. The terrorists' real plan was to detonate a nuke to high altitude over Manhattan, causing an electromagnetic pulse to liberate the city. Ocelot then spoke to Ames, revealing that Ames was sent there to keep an eye on the president, suspecting that he might betray their group. Just as Ames was about to share more information, he suddenly suffered a fatal heart attack.
What are you talking about? No need for denials. We know what you are, Colonel Ames. They knew that the president was planning to betray them, so they sent you in to keep tabs on him. Am I right? You! Sorry, Colonel. You failed to carry out your duties.
You'll never escape the Lali Lulelo.
Is that so? What the?
You tricked me. I understand now. Ocelot.
You? Which team are you with? Show me your face. You know who he is.
No, he is not one of mine.
Identify yourself. We meet at last.
Just before Raiden could be captured by Ocelot's forces, the cyborg ninja showed up out of nowhere and gave Raiden a chance to escape. Raiden then made his way to President Johnson's location, but on the way he ran into the terrorist commander who claimed to be Solid Snake. This enraged Pliskin, who revealed himself to be the real Solid Snake, and started firing at the imposter from a helicopter. The terrorist leader, using an advanced exoskeleton, dodged Snake's attacks and boarded a Harrier with Vamp as the pilot. Snake quickly tossed Raiden a Stinger missile launcher and told him to shoot it down. Raiden managed to take the Harrier down, but before it could crash, Metal Gear Ray, which had been hijacked from the United States Marines 2 years earlier, appeared and caught the Harrier. Ray then launched missiles, blowing up parts of the big shell and damaging the Kasaka, forcing it to land. After the chaos, Ray took off into the ocean, taking the Harrier along with it.
That's Metal Gear! It's already active!
her.
After recovering from Ray's attack, Solid Snake reached out to Raiden via codec, giving him a rundown of the situation. He introduced Raiden to his partner, Otacon, who was piloting the Kasaka. Otacon had saved Snake from the sinking tanker 2 years ago, and since then, Snake had faked his own death using Liquid Snake's body as a decoy. Snake and Otacon revealed to Raiden that they were there to stop the terrorists from using the new Metal Gear prototype, continuing their mission with the anti-Metal Gear NGO, Philanthropy. They also mentioned that Otacon had another personal reason for being at the Big Shell, to rescue his sister Emma Emmerich.
What about the DNA results from that body? That was Liquid's body. He and Snake are identical on the genetic level.
Liquid?
A deception, for our own protection. We stole his frozen body from some organization. Kind of a hassle, though.
That's all there is to it.
Are you two really an NGO?
Insofar as we're a non-profit organization of civilians advocating a cause, yes. The cause happens to be the eradication of Metal Gear.
We work on our own, but it's a cause worth fighting for.
Why would you stick your neck out for something this risky?
That's the way I used to look at it, 4 years ago. I was holed up in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, drinking too much.
We have a responsibility to the coming generations, to the world.
What responsibility?
To keep track of the mistakes we've made as a species.
We need to remember, to spread the word, to fight for change, and that's what keeps me alive.
You think you can change the future?
I'm not as arrogant as that.
What you do isn't grassroots activism. It's more like terrorism.
I admit that.
But our group, Philanthropy, received some information. A new Metal Gear prototype was being developed here, and terrorists were planning to raid the facility. The information came from a very reliable source.
So you're here to...
We're here to stop all that. But I also have a personal motive.
Looks like the terrorists have his sister in the Big Shell. We're here on our own, not under anyone's orders. We have our own battles. Otacon's here for someone. I'm not.
This is a military mission.
Convinced that the nuclear button had been accessed because of Ray's sudden appearance, Raiden quickly headed towards the Shell 2 core to rescue President Johnson. The damage to the Shell 2 connecting brick forced Raiden to carefully hand grip across a dislodged support beam, which also helped him avoid the Gorlukovich soldiers who were investigating the area. Once inside the Shell 2 core, Raiden overheard a radio conversation between Olga Gorlukovich and the terrorist leader. Olga mentioned she had unfinished business with Solid Snake and planned to take her men back to Russia to live independently once everything was over. To keep the president from escaping and prevent anyone from rescuing him, Olga activated an electrified walkway leading to the room where the president was held. With no way to reach the president directly, Raiden went into the flooded lower floors of the shell to find a Nikita remote control missile launcher. He successfully used it to destroy the control panel for the electrified walkway, clearing the way to the president. Raiden entered the president's room, and after President Johnson initially mistook him for a female assassin, he began to reveal some shocking truths. Johnson told Raiden about the Patriots, a shadowy organization that secretly controlled America, even deciding who the next president would be. Nobody really knew who the Patriots were, but Johnson mentioned that all key decisions were made by a group of 12 men known as the Wiseman Committee.
The Patriots. Even I don't know who the actual members are. Are they financial, political, or military leaders? No one knows who the Patriots really are. Even my instructions come from a cutout. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Your office? The White House?
Merely puppets, pawns in a game. By pledging my loyalty, an insignificant son of a senator was awarded the presidency. Of course, that wasn't the only price I had to pay.
What do you mean?
Even if a pawn becomes a queen, it is still just a playing piece. I wanted to leave my own mark in history, but my ambitions were... You'll understand someday.
Johnson then dropped another bombshell. The terrorist leader was actually his predecessor, the 43rd United States President George Sears, also known as Solidus Snake. Solidus was a clone of the legendary soldier Big Boss created in the Les Infiltrates project. Johnson explained that Solidus had orchestrated the Shadow Moses incident in 2005, but was later removed from office by the Patriots. Unlike Johnson, who simply wanted to join the Patriots, Solidus aimed to challenge them.
My predecessor, George Sears. That was the name the public came to know him by. I knew him by his code name, Solidus Snake. He was the third Snake, preceded by Solid and Liquid, a survivor of the Les Enfants Terribles project. Neither solid nor liquid, he was a well-balanced masterpiece that the Patriots saw fit to entrust with the presidency. However, he fell out of grace with the organization 4 years ago. When acting on his own, he started an incident.
4 years ago. Shadow Moses.
The president confirmed that the Big Shell was just a cover for the construction of Arsenal Gear, a massive mobile fortress protected by mass-produced unmanned Metal Gear rays. Arsenal Gear could launch nuclear warheads from anywhere on the planet and had access to the military's tactical network, giving it absolute control over the nation's armed forces and nuclear arsenal. However, its true purpose was even more insidious: to filter information from the internet and other digital communications using an AI called GW, which stood for George Washington. The Patriots wanted to shape history according to their will while keeping their existence a secret. Johnson's final plea was for Raiden to find GW, the main programmer Emmett Emmerich, and give her a computer worm to wipe out the AI. Feeling like he had nothing left to lose, Johnson suddenly lunged for Raiden's gun, seemingly wanting Raiden to end his life. Raiden hesitated, but before anything could happen, Revolver Ocelot intervened and shot Johnson before Raiden could react.
Well, I've told you everything you need to know. There's only one thing that remains to be done. Now, kill me.
What the?
There's no time to argue. The final check for my vital ID will start any second. If you kill me now, you'll at least prevent the nuclear strike.
Cut it out!
Do it! That's your role! Pull! No! Good!
That's abusing your right to free speech, Mr. President. Or is it ex-president?
The president! Why did you...
Alas, my finger must have slipped. I'll see you around, carrier boy.
Forget him. He did us a favor. Without free will, there is no difference between submission and rebellion. My only real choice is to put an end to this charade. Let me at least have the freedom to end it myself.
What are you...
Find Emma. Stop Arsenal. This is my last order as your commander-in-chief. I'm counting on you.
After the chaos settled, Snake informed Raiden that he was aware of the Arsenal Gear project and that the Big Shell was just a cover-up. He reassured Raiden that there was no threat of dioxins being released. Then, Snake recounted what happened during the tanker incident, how the Patriots had manipulated to discredit him, and how the Ray project of United States Marines conflicted with the Arsenal Gear project backed by the United States Navy and the Patriots.
I'd infiltrated the dummy tanker to obtain proof that a Metal Gear was under development. Shortly after I made it aboard, an armed group led by Colonel Gerlukovich raided the ship and gained control.
Olga and Ocelot were among the raiding party.
Yeah, and him.
Who are you talking about?
A man that was supposed to be dead.
Their target was also Metal Gear Ray. But Ocelot eliminated Colonel Gerlukovich and Marine Commander Scott Dolph, and he hijacked Ray.
So he betrayed them?
I don't know what kind of deal was going down. All I remember is what Ocelot said at the time. Something like, I'm taking it back.
Ocelot then sank the tanker, along with the soldiers of the Marine Corps.
Raiden set out to find Emma. Along the way, he encountered and battled Vamp, who miraculously seemed to still be alive despite everything. Before Raiden defeated him, Vamp dropped a bombshell. Even without the threat of a nuclear strike, they could still use Arsenal's purified hydrogen bomb to unleash an EMP over Manhattan, plunging the city into darkness. He also hinted that Dead Cell was framed for the terrorist acts 6 months earlier by none other than the Patriots, contrary to what the press had reported.
This is no ordinary nuclear bomb. This weapon is capable of heavy hydrogen nuclear fusion using lasers and magnetics to generate heat-insulated compression. It was a top-secret project initiated by the current president, and Solidus has no idea of its existence. The clean thermonuclear bomb is at an experimental stage and is handled differently. Specifically, it becomes launch-capable when Arsenal is activated. A nuclear threat still exists. 6 months ago, we lost everything we believed in. We were abandoned to take the fall in their cover-up. We were labeled as killers, responsible for the mass murder of civilians as well as our own allies. And the public believed every word, turning a deaf ear to whatever we had to say to the contrary. Our only goal is to wipe them from the face of the earth and destroy this world of deceit they have created along with them.
You're insane.
Insane? We might be the only ones telling the truth.
After beating Vamp, Raiden swam his way over to Emma. After some convincing that he wasn't with the terrorists, including showing his coded nanomachines, Raiden finally rescued Emma. As they took a breather, Emma filled him in on what she knew about the shady Patriots group. Turns out Emma had created their AI system GW by distributing a program disguised as a Y2K countervirus. Thankfully, GW wasn't fully operational yet and still lacked the ability to make complex judgments. But Emma dropped a chilling detail. There was supposed to be a major test in the next few days to provide GW with intricate data to bring it online. Whatever twisted plan the Patriots had, it was about to take a huge step forward.
Do you remember the panic that gripped the computer industry prior to the end of the century?
You mean the Y2K problem?
That's right. If you recall, our government supplied the world with a countermeasure program, using the internet at full capacity. The program was distributed to every governmental organization, every key facility throughout the world. In addition, the same program was included in an OS application for distribution among the public.
Raiden and Emma headed for the Shell 1 core, but thanks to Ray's earlier missile strike, the bridge connecting bridge and the two shells were blown apart. The only option was to cross the treacherous oil fence from strut L to strut E on Shell 1. Emma slowly inched her way across while Raiden and Snake provided sniper cover fire. She was almost to the other side when the unthinkable happened. Vamp reappeared, holding a knife to Emma's throat. Raiden quickly took a shot, seemingly dropping Vamp again. But in one final act of malice, the undying soldier impaled Emma before falling into the ocean below. Snake raced to the other side, taking out cipher drones left and right. He got Emma to the Shell 1 core, but she was fading fast. As Raiden arrived, Snake and Emma were preparing to upload the virus she created, a digital warhead designed to take down GW, the Patriots' AI system, once and for all.
How's Emma?
I think he got some internal organs. We can't stop the bleeding.
I'm here.
Got the disc. Emma set everything up. Apparently all you have to do is pop in the disc. That should insert the virus into the AI.
Is it working?
Just leave it to Emma. What the?
An antibody agent?
Damn! The connection's been cut.
Is the virus upload complete?
I don't think so. The count stopped at 90%. Otacon.
I don't think Emma's made any mistakes. But a portion of the worm cluster might have been altered after the disk left Emma's hands.
By the Patriots?
Will the virus still work?
I have no idea.
Hal, is everything all right?
It's all right. Everything's all right.
Good. At least I won't be adding another page to our family's dark history.
Yeah, that's right.
What if the virus doesn't work?
Either destroy that thing, or take out Solidus and his men.
How do we get on board?
I don't think we can. Unless somebody inside gives us a hand.
Emma and Otacon share one final heartbreaking moment together before she succumbed to Vamp's vicious attack. In those tragic moments, Snake made a horrifying discovery. The virus hadn't uploaded properly. Their only remaining option was the most dangerous one of all: infiltrate Arsenal Gear itself and take down Solidus and his men directly. Otacon was utterly devastated after losing Emma. He insisted on trying to help the hostages, fearing he'd just be a liability on the Arsenal mission. But Snake knew better. He reassured his friend that he was the hostages' only hope now. With Otacon off to rescue the hostages, Snake admitted to Ryan that they needed help infiltrating Arsenal Gear's interior. That's when the mysterious cyborg ninja reappeared one final time. But what happened next left them both floored. The ninja removed the mask, revealing their true identity as none other than Olga Gerlukovich. Before Raiden could react, Olga knocked him out cold with a brutal strike. As he faded into unconsciousness, Snake's chilling words rang out. "I don't recall ever saying I was on your side."
A ninja? What the?
Arsenal's going to take off. We still need you to take care of a few things. This time, do not fail us.
Snake, what's this all about?
Bedtime, Raiden. I wouldn't do that.
You're changing sides now?
Change sides? I don't recall saying I was on yours.
Damn it. You!
Ready for some shut-eye?
When Raiden regained consciousness, he found himself in a living nightmare, stripped naked and strapped to a torture bed. Solidus and Ocelot loomed over him, the smug looks on their faces making his blood run cold. That's when Solidus dropped a mind-shattering bombshell about Raiden's past. He revealed that he was the one who trained the young Raiden as a part of his small boy unit during the Liberian Civil War after his real parents were killed. Under Solidus' twisted tutelage, Raiden became a child of soldier, par excellence, earning him sickening nicknames like Jack the Ripper and White Devil. As Raiden's world crumbled around him, Ocelot chimed in, noting now the eye patch wearing Solidus striking resemblance to his father, Big Boss. It was as if the Patriots' dark legacy had come full circle.
You're the spitting image of Big Boss.
Is that so? Perhaps I should be grateful to this kid for that.
After Ocelot's departure, Olga entered, her expression one of pure anguish. She proceeded to reveal the truth more horrifying than anything Raiden could have imagined. The Patriots had stolen Olga's newborn child from her, a baby she never even got to meet. And now they were holding the innocent's life as leverage. If Raiden failed his mission, her child would be executed. She informed him that Snake was waiting for him. As Raiden fought through the hangar housing the mass-produced ray units, his codec rang. It was Rose. With a trembling voice, she asked if the horrific revelations from Solidus were true, that he had been a child soldier molded into a merciless killer. Raiden solemnly confirmed it, finally laying bare the darkest secrets of his past. He could no longer hide from the truth.
Someone told me that there are over 300,000 children in combat right now. I was just one of them.
So you remember? I thought your memory had been manipulated by them.
It was, but I have nightmares every day. Pieces of the past I can't put together.
Why didn't you tell me?
You couldn't begin to understand.
You wouldn't know that until you try me.
I didn't want you to get hurt. There was never a real reason for me to fight, except that someone put a gun in my hand. And that someone was him.
It wasn't your fault.
If I survived the day's fight, I was praised, fed, and had a bed to sleep in. I think I was only 6 when I held my first AK. But I'm not even sure of that.
Jack.
I'm not like Snake. I never questioned why we fought. There was no purpose, no way out. They give you a gun, you ask how many to kill. If you didn't, you were the one they shot instead.
It's okay. No one is blaming you.
We were shown Hollywood action films every day. The kind with macho guys and big guns. They call it image training. They built us from the ground up into killing machines. We were fed once a day. I can still taste the gunpowder they mixed into the food.
Gunpowder? In the food?
The gunpowder had toluene in it, giving it hallucinogenic properties. It kept us drugged, controllable.
Oh my God!
When the Civil War ended, those of us who survived were taken in by NGOs. They gave me a new life in the States. I can't complain. But nothing's changed. The only people who have no problem with my past have secrets and agendas of their own. Terrible nightmares. Every night. I can never forget.
Jack.
I'm afraid of the night. That's why I don't sleep next to you.
You should have told me.
Told you what? That I'm a killer? And always have been?
No.
What I hate more than anything else in the world is my own past. I didn't want you or anyone to know about it. Now I know why I was chosen for this mission. No one can take him on, take him down, except me. I've been kept alive this long for this. I knew as soon as I saw Solidus.
Jack, I love you the way you are now. You have to believe me. I didn't know anything about you, I admit that. Where you were born, how you grew up. But I know that now. And I know that what I feel for you can only get better. And I'll share in your past if that's the price.
It doesn't work that way. No one can share the burden of what I've done. It's not one of those warm and fuzzy things couples share.
I accept the good and the bad, Jack. That's what you do for someone you love.
I don't want to share my past with anyone. I just want to forget about it.
Jack, I haven't told you, about what I've done.
The last 2 years with you, it's been more than I've ever hoped for.
Jack.
But I can't go any farther. I know you want to get married. But I can't. I can't risk starting a family. There's no way to erase my childhood.
It's all right, Jack. Please, don't say any more.
After Olga freed him from his bonds, a shaken Raiden pressed on and reunited with Snake, but Rose had her own earth-shattering confession. Nervously, she admitted to being a spy for the Patriots all along. She had become his girlfriend merely to keep tabs on him for her masters. However, somewhere along the way, she fell truly deeply in love with the man behind the soldier. She even altered her appearance to better suit his desires. As if it wasn't enough to shake Raiden to his core, Rose's final words before the transmission cut out changed everything.
If it's about that conversation just now, I'm the one who's sorry.
No, it's something else.
What is it?
That day at Federal Hall 2 years ago, it wasn't a coincidence. I was ordered to keep an eye on you.
Keep an eye on me?
Yes, by the Patriots.
You're a spy?
I suppose. Yes. It's an ugly word. Are you still there?
Was sleeping with me a part of the job?
I fell in love with you.
How could anyone?
I can't excuse what I did. I've reported every detail of your personal life to them these 2 years. What you did, said, everything.
Must have been fun.
But some things I didn't tell anyone. Like what I felt for you.
So that's why you were involved in this mission. I should have known. Why else would they toss an analyst into the mix at the last minute?
I'm sorry. I know what I did was wrong.
No matter where I go, I get used.
I reinvented myself to suit your tastes. Hairstyle, clothes, the way I moved, things I talked about. You say you love the color of my hair, my eyes. They're not even real.
You must have gone over my psych profile with a fine-tooth comb.
It was my job.
Great performance. Had me completely fooled.
What I really wanted was for you to see the real me. It hurt to play out this artificial romance. It was worse to lie to myself than to you. The more love you gave me, the more it hurt. Because I knew the person you loved was just a character.
So it was artificial on my end too. It was just a game, not the real thing.
Oh, Jack.
I feel better knowing that.
What?
I was in love, or thought I was, with someone who didn't exist. I was trying to be someone I wasn't by loving what wasn't real. I don't know who you really are. The person I knew isn't real. She's not the woman I'm talking to right now. In a sense, the deception was my own, not theirs.
Jack, I thought I was acting because that was my job. But I did fall in love with you. That wasn't an act.
You expect me to believe that? It's okay. You had your reasons, right? Hey, I understand, but I have nothing left to...
Jack!
What?
I'm carrying... I'm pregnant, Jack.
Rose! What's going on?
Snake quickly apologized for his earlier betrayal, explaining that he had to use Raiden as a Trojan horse to infiltrate Arsenal gear. With that cleared up, the two of them fought their way through the Arsenal Tengu commandos. During the chaos, Otacon made a shocking discovery. The Colonel Campbell who had been guiding Raiden throughout the mission wasn't real. He was an AI construct created by GW, pieced together from Raiden's own hopes and expectations.
Raiden, about this colonel of yours. I found out where he is.
Where?
Inside Arsenal.
What?
I've checked out all the possibilities, but I keep coming back to Arsenal. It isn't a relay point, it's the origin of the signal. And the encryption protocol it uses is exactly the same as that of Arsenal's AI, the so-called GW.
What the hell does this mean?
I think it means you've been talking to an AI.
That's impossible.
The Colonel probably isn't GW per se. GW was most likely stimulating cortical activity in the dormant part of your brain through signal manipulation of your own nanomachines. The Colonel is, in part, your own creation, cobbled together from expectations and experience.
That's crazy!
But it's probably the truth. The virus may be starting to affect GW, which would explain the Colonel's behavior.
It was all an illusion? Everything I've done so far?
Raiden.
Snake, what's happening around here?
I don't know. What I do know is that you're standing right here in front of me. Not an illusion. Flesh and blood.
Huh?
It's your call. You can drop this if you want.
No, I can't do that. Let's go.
After the Tengus fight, Snake came face to face with Fortune, the woman convinced he had killed her father, Scott Dolph. As they prepared to clash, Raiden ascended a nearby ladder onto a massive platform overlooking the chaos. That's when Solidus's voice boomed out, calling to Raiden from his concealed position. He revealed the twisted truth behind the S3 plan, the Solid Snake simulation, designed to forge the perfect soldier through VR training that Raiden himself had unknowingly undergone. Suddenly, Raiden found himself swarmed by a horde of Metal Gear Ray units. He destroyed several with his Stinger missile before finally collapsing to his knees, drained by the onslaught. As Solidus emerged, he moved in for the kill, but Olga jumped in between them, shielding Raiden with her own body. With her dying breath, she defied Solidus one last time. Enraged, Solidus ordered the remaining Rays to exterminate Raiden, but it was too late. Emma's virus had taken hold, throwing the units into confusion. Solidus screamed in rage, cursing the Patriots as he destroyed the final Rays himself. Just then, Fortune entered dragging a cuffed Snake behind her. The scene froze as Raiden finally blacked out from exhaustion.
Snake? Bring him in!
With everyone reeling from the chaos, Ocelot couldn't help but revel in twisted amusement. He then dropped a mind-shattering bombshell. The entire Big Shell crisis had been meticulously orchestrated by the Patriots from the very start. The eerie similarities to Shadow Moses, the rogue Dead Cell unit, Raiden's connections to the terrorist leader, even the Foxdie mimicking computer virus. It had been all carefully scripted to forge Raiden into their perfect soldier. Just as they had used Solidus's ambitions as a pawn, the Patriots manipulated President Johnson to serve their own agenda. The one wild card they never counted for: the real Solid Snake showing up and blowing their simulation wide open, which is why the AI colonel kept insisting Snake wasn't part of the plan.
Ames and the president's deaths. The ninja. The computer virus that mimics Foxdie. Did you really think they were all a coincidence? Ames' own nanomachines were used to shut down his pacemaker. I arranged for the appearance of the ninja as well. As for the president, although Johnson realized what was going on, he played out his allotted part. As for the computer virus, it's a digital counterpart of Foxdie. It was also designed to eliminate every scrap of information regarding the Patriots from GW. Your plan was invalidated even before execution, Solidus. Fat Man was a different story. He's one of our own people, a sort of examiner we hired to test the boy's progress before letting him tackle the exercise proper. We had to arrange for Stillman's presence to coax the maniac into agreeing. If the boy had allowed the Big Shell to be destroyed, this exercise would have ended there. The project has no room for failures.
What do you mean?
Given the right situation, the right story, anyone can be shaped into Snake. Even rookies can fight like men of experience. An instant creation of genius. And this training kernel would provide more than enough data to formulate such a program. You, Dead Cell, Olga, you're all nothing but pawns placed to create the perfect simulation.
With a sinister grin, Ocelot executed the stunned Fortune, revealing her supernatural abilities were merely more Patriot smoke and mirrors. He then boarded the commandeered Metal Gear Ray, preparing to wipe them all out. But when Ocelot fired Ray's payload, Fortune's dying body somehow deflected the missiles in one final miraculous act, shielding Raiden, Snake, and even Solidus.
enough data. All I have to do is retrieve Arsenal and clean up the refuse from the exercise.
Just try.
How's this then? Damn.
Fortune!
You idiots! Get the hell away from there!
I told you, your luck's run out. Take your reward. It's all the payload Ray has. Die!
Everybody down!
What the? Impossible!
She is Lady Luck.
My name is Helena Dolph Jackson, the daughter of a proud and noble soldier. I can see my family again.
As Ocelot prepared to unleash Ray's full fury, his body suddenly convulsed. The haunting spirit of Liquid Snake had resurfaced, seizing control of Ocelot's very being. From the Ray's cockpit, Liquid's echoing voice boomed out. He revealed that he was the one who had leaked intel about Arsenal gear to his twin brother Solid Snake. His sole purpose? To lure Snake into this explosive situation at the Big Shell. Now armed with Ocelot's knowledge of the Patriots' secret locations, Liquid proclaimed his intent to hunt them all down and destroy them once and for all. His thirst for vengeance knew no bounds. Issuing one final taunt, Liquid sent Arsenal gear itself on a collision course with Manhattan, a potential catastrophe of unthinkable proportions. He then retreated into Ray's armored interior and blasted off in pursuit of the Patriots. Free from his restraints, Snake watched in horror as his demonic brother took to the skies. He knew he had to stop Liquid's maniacal quest at all costs. Without hesitation, Snake plunged into the waters below, giving chase as Ray disappeared over the horizon.
Damn.
Like surfing, it's a good way to go.
Liquid! Stop this thing! Hey, Snake! You coming?
Arsenal gear carved a path of apocalyptic destruction through the streets of Manhattan. Buildings crumbled as the massive war machine barreled towards Federal Hall, where it finally ground to a halt. After plummeting from Arsenal's heights, Raiden and Solidus recovered on the rooftop of the iconic building. It was then that Solidus attempted to explain the twisted reasoning behind his maniacal ambition. With a mix of anger and sorrow, he expressed his anguish over being denied the ability to pass his own genetic legacy. Solidus wanted to be remembered, to etch his name in history's annals, but it went too far beyond mere ego or greed. No, Solidus claimed his true goal was to destroy the Patriot stranglehold, to restore the freedoms and civil liberties they had systematically stripped away from the world.
All you want is power at any cost.
Jack, it's not power I want. What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities. The founding principles of this country. Everything that's about to be wiped out by their digital censorship. Jack, listen to me. We're all born with an expiration date. No one lasts forever. Life is nothing but a grace period for turning the best of our genetic material into the next generation.
As the dust settled around the wreckage of Federal Hall, Raiden received another haunting transmission. This time it was the eerie AI constructs of the Colonel and Rose, speaking as mouthpieces for the Patriots themselves. They proceeded to reveal the true twisted depths of the Patriots' agenda, one that had transcended the physical world entirely. The dawn of the digital age allowed for an overabundance of information, trivial and profound alike, to be endlessly preserved and accessible. To the Patriots, this represented an existential threat to the evolution of human society itself. Their solution, the S3 plan, Selection for Societal Sanity, was designed to filter the flow of mimetic information that would shape future generations. The Big Shell, the AI explained in the Colonel's voice, had merely been a monumental test case to validate S3's crisis management capabilities, just as Emma had warned. The Patriots now saw themselves as the supreme arbiters of truth in this digital realm. Their reasoning was chilling. Humans' tendencies to overthink and reject harsh realities will only create an exponential glut of junk information that bury what the Patriots deemed absolute truth. Only they, the AI proclaimed through Rose's familiar tones, were properly positioned to curate the future mimetic legacy for the good of mankind's development.
Raiden, are you receiving? We're still here.
How's that possible? The AI was destroyed.
Only GW.
Who are you?
To begin with, we're not what you'd call human. Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
Cut the crap! If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
What?
Jack, listen carefully, like a good boy.
The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us.
We started with genetic engineering. And in the end, we succeeded in digitizing life itself.
But there are things not covered by genetic information.
What do you mean?
Human memories, ideas, culture, history.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
You're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed.
But it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
We're trying to stop that from happening.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
And you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not?
Absolutely. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
That's what it means to create context.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
That's not true. I have the right.
Does something like a self exist inside of you?
That which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being.
In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel.
Another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that it would endow you with some sense of strength.
That's crap!
Is it? Would you prefer that someone else tell you? All right then. Explain it to him.
Jack, you're simply the best. And you got there all by yourself.
Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul searching?
Don't think you'll find anything, though.
Ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
It's not my fault. It's not your fault.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
Should someone like that be able to decide what is truth?
Should someone like you even have the right to decide?
You've done nothing but abuse your freedom.
You don't deserve to be free.
We're not the ones smothering the world. You are.
The individual is supposed to be weak, but far from powerless. A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
And the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species.
Building a legacy involves figuring out what is wanted and what needs to be done for that goal. All this you used to struggle with. Now we think for you.
We are your guardians, after all.
You want to control human thought? Human behavior?
Of course. Anything can be quantified nowadays. That's what this exercise was designed to prove.
You fell in love with me just as you were meant to, after all. Isn't that right, Jack?
Ocelot was not told the whole truth, to say the least.
We rule an entire nation. Of what interest would a single soldier, no matter how able, be to us?
The S3 plan does not stand for solid snake simulation. What it does stand for is selection for societal sanity. The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
What you experienced was the final test of its effectiveness.
That's crazy!
You heard what President Johnson said.
The Arsenal's GW system is the key to their supremacy.
The objective of this exercise was to establish such a method.
With the truth about their digital ambitions laid bare, the AI gave Raiden an ultimatum: kill Solidus or forfeit the lives of Olga's child and Rose's unborn baby. Raiden was trapped, his loved ones held hostage to ensure compliance. Solidus tried to convince him that defeating him was the only way to access the locations of the Patriot AI from Raiden's nanomachines. But the tormented soldier had one final gut punch to deliver. He revealed to Raiden that it was he, Solidus, who had murdered the young soldier's parents all those years ago. Raiden's world shattered in that moment. The man who raised him as a child killer was also the one who orphaned him in the first place. His anguish and rage boiled over, fueling him into an apocalyptic sword duel with his demonic father figure. After an intense clash, Raiden finally struck Solidus down in a shower of blood. The fallen soldier's spine was nearly severed as he tumbled from the Federal Hall rooftop to the steps below. With his last ounce of strength, Solidus dragged his broken body towards the statue of George Washington, his arms outstretched, straining from one final grasp at the American dream he had sacrificed everything for. As Raiden stood amid the rubble outside of Federal Hall trying to process everything that had transpired, Snake appeared. He revealed that he and Otacon were going after the Patriots themselves, using the virus disk as a guide. Since it was programmed to censor the Patriot leaders' names, it will only contain clues to their identities. Snake also dropped one last bombshell. The disk they had given Raiden earlier was a dummy. Part of ensuring their infiltration plan went off without the Sons of Liberty getting the real worm cluster. Raiden insisted on joining the fight, but Snake stopped him. "You still got people to catch up with," he said cryptically. Though the big shell had been an elaborate simulation, Snake reassured Raiden that everything he experienced, every emotion, was unbelievably real. Now it was up to Raiden to decide what truths to pass on to the future and forge his own path forward. With those parting words, Snake wished the type of well and departed. As if on cue, Rose appeared, a vision of hope amid the devastation. The two embraced, vowing to start anew together, to build a real life and real family, free from the Patriot shadow.
What's wrong?
Nothing. Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
See me for what I am, okay?
I know.
Sometime after parting ways with Raiden, Snake and Otacon thought they had finally traced the Patriots' whereabouts using the virus disk from Arsenal gear, but what they uncovered was a dead end, literally. All 12 of the individuals identified as the Patriot leaders had been corpses for over a century. The trial of intel that led them there was nothing but an elaborately constructed fake lead. Snake realized the horrible truth. The information they retrieved from Arsenal was just another layer of the Patriots' deception. By sending them on this wild goose chase, this had eliminated philanthropy's only credible lead.
Snake, you there? It's me. I've finished going over that disk.
Did you find the Patriots list?
Of course. It contains the personal data of 12 people. There was a name on it. Snake, it was one of our biggest contributors.
What's going on around here?
I don't know.
Anyway, where are they?
Well, we were right about them being on Manhattan, but...
But what?
They're already dead. All 12 of them.
When did it happen?
Well, about 100 years ago.
What the hell?
Before diving into Metal Gear Solid 2, we need to take a little trip back to Metal Gear Solid VR missions. This game dropped in 1999, serving fans of the first Metal Gear Solid with 300 missions to sink their teeth into. But here's the kicker. If you beat the game, you get a confidential message and see an image of Metal Gear Ray flash on the screen. At first glance, it felt like a fun teaser for the next game, letting players know Kojima was cooking up something new. But when you start looking at this from a story perspective, it raises an interesting possibility. What if VR missions wasn't just a side game? What if it's canon? Think about it. When Snake and Raiden first meet in Metal Gear Solid 2, Snake asks about Raiden's training and Raiden mentions VR.
I was part of the Army's Force 21 trials.
Force 21? That's about tactical IT deployment, right? Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
Sneaking mission 60, weapons 80, advanced...
VR, huh?
But realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year a few soldiers die in field exercises.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
This makes me wonder, what if when we were playing VR missions, we weren't Snake? What if we were actually playing as Raiden, unknowingly stepping into his training program? It sounds like a stretch, but it lines up when you think about the inclusion of Metal Gear Ray as the final reveal. Why would that appear if it wasn't part of Raiden's journey? And here's another wild thought. Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes might also tie into this theme. Sure, on the surface, it's a straightforward retelling of the Shadow Moses incident, but Raiden's dialogue in Metal Gear Solid 2 got me thinking. He constantly talks about experiencing Shadow Moses, just not the way we'd expect. Remember when Otacon tells Raiden that parts of his memories could be fabricated by nanomachines?
Raiden, about this colonel of yours. I found out where he is.
Where?
Inside Arsenal.
What?
I've checked out all the possibilities, but I keep coming back to Arsenal. It isn't a relay point, it's the origin of the signal. And The encryption protocol it uses is exactly the same as that of Arsenal's AI, the so-called GW.
What the hell does this mean?
I think it means you've been talking to an AI.
That's impossible.
The kernel probably isn't GW per se. GW was most likely stimulating cortical activity in the dormant part of your brain through signal manipulation of your own nanomachines. The kernel is, in part, your own creation, cobbled together from expectations and experience.
That's crazy!
But it's probably the truth. The virus may be starting to affect GW, which would explain the kernel's behavior.
It was all an illusion? Everything I've done so far?
Raiden.
Snake, what's happening around here?
I don't know. What I do know is that you're standing right here in front of me. Not an illusion. Flesh and blood.
Huh?
It's your call. You can drop this if you want.
No, I can't do that. Let's go.
If nanomachines could create something as complex as the kernel AI, who's to say they couldn't recreate the Shadow Moses incident in Raiden's mind? And here's some supporting evidence. Raiden mentions he read Natasha's book, Into the Darkness of Shadow Moses, The Unofficial Truth. If those memories are part of a Solid Snake simulation, it adds a whole new layer to the Twin Snakes and VR missions. Maybe these games represent Raiden stepping into the shoes of Snake, or as Solidus would say, experiencing the Solid Snake simulation.
Jack, I've been watching how you fight. It looks like you've remembered the way you used to kill in the old days. Or is it one of the S3 plan's proud achievements?
What are you talking about?
It came as a complete surprise when Ocelot discovered the S3 data from GW. Not a bad idea, though. Using fire to fight fire, creating the perfect assassin to retire Solid Snake's brother. S3 stands for Solid Snake Simulation. It's a development program to artificially reproduce Solid Snake, the perfect warrior. The result is a Foxhound Commando. When Foxhound no longer exists, a simulated Solid Snake shaped by VR regimen. Sound like someone you know, Jack? I'm sorry to see you reduced to one of the Patriots' puppets. But I've made use of you, and their plan too. Solid Snake's sudden appearance, your arrival. It was obvious the Patriots were among my ranks. I had to smoke out the agent before the mission entered the final phase. You came in handy, as bait. Jack, those days during the Civil War were as real as they come. Every day was absolute, split between life and death. You ran from it, and now you've been led back to war by something less than real.
Now let's talk about the tanker mission. I have a theory. What if the tanker itself is a VR simulation? Snake's line at the start of the game, the Hudson River 2 years ago, sounds like a callback, and when he finally tells Raiden what really happens that night during the codec conversation after President Johnson's death, the pieces seem to fit together. To back this up, I put the intro scene and the codec conversation side by side. Watch them and tell me they don't sync up perfectly.
There's no doubt that Arsenal gear is being built here. And it was all set up 2 years ago, on that day. All of it.
2 years ago? What really happened here?
The Hudson River, 2 years ago. We had classified intelligence that a new type of metal gear was scheduled for transport. The whole thing stank, but our noses have been out in the cold too long.
I can't help but think that while Snake is recounting the tanker mission to Raiden, Raiden's nanomachines might once again be placing him in Snake's shoes, literally. Earlier in the game, Raiden mentioned that he experienced the tanker in VR, but Snake immediately shuts it down, saying it's nothing like the real thing.
That's right. Otacon, me, we were used.
We'd hoped that by going public with photos of the new Metal Gear, we could persuade the government. At least that was the plan at the time.
I've gone through VR training of the tanker mission before.
Yeah? Well, I doubt it accurately simulates the events of that mission.
Here's the twist. Snake knew the truth about what happened that night. Meanwhile, the Patriots likely had Ryan go through a fabricated version of the tanker scenario during his training. But it's only when Snake shares the real story that everything clicks into place for Ryan. I'll admit, it's more of a theory than something backed by hard evidence, but it does make you wonder if the Patriots had Raiden running simulations. Could they have intentionally blurred the lines between VR and reality? Now that we uncovered my fan theories on Metal Gear Solid 2, let's actually dissect and explore. This story tackles the issue of misinformation in a way that's almost eerily present, especially considering it came out way back in 2001. The game dives deep into how information can be manipulated and controlled in the digital age. You've got this shadowy organization called the Patriots, who are basically pulling all the strings behind the scenes. They're not just controlling governments or armies, they're controlling the flow of information itself. It's like they're the ultimate editors deciding what news gets out and what doesn't. Sounds familiar? It's not too far off from some of the concerns we have today about social media algorithms and fake news. But here's where it really gets interesting. The game doesn't just tell you about this stuff, it makes you experience it firsthand. As you play through the game, you're constantly bombarded with information from various sources. Raiden will question if what he's looking at is even real. It's bad enough to the point where he battles what's the truth and what's fiction. It's like everyday life today when we explore Instagram or X and see a post telling us about a certain celebrity, and for a brief second we believe it to be true until we do some research. The struggle Raiden explored in this game was only a representation of the fears Kojima had with the rise of the internet. Of course, this game came out years before the first tweet or Instagram post, but he knew with the truth being a click away, lies are quicker to get to us. Some of it's true, some of it's false, and a lot of it is somewhere in the between. You gotta figure out what to believe, just like we do every day when we scroll through our news feeds. When Raiden talks with Emma, she tells him the truth, and it's here where the true warnings of the future start to arrive. Whether we are talking about misinformation or just plain censorship, the idea of regulation information, because the Patriots control what you know versus what they want you to know. Like, did you click on this video, or did the YouTube algorithm make you click this video? Listen to Emma here, and you start to see and hear Kojima's true warning about how dangerous regulating information can be.
Yes, loud and clear.
The president said that arsenal gear was the Patriots' key to supremacy.
That's as good a description as any.
What exactly is it?
It's a massive data processing system capable of controlling information on a global scale.
A data processing system?
That's right. The system's a social device for maintaining the Patriots' control.
You've lost me.
Well, in this day and age, information emerges from every direction and is freely distributed. A variety of information gathered by servers employing the latest in high-speed communication networks and P2P technology is rapidly circulated to individuals. In fact, the speed of this circulation process is accelerating on an almost daily basis. The Patriots seem to be afraid of this development. Apparently, they believe that their role will shift from dominant to dominated. Let me give you an example. You're aware of Solid Snake's anti-Metal Gear activities, aren't you?
Yeah, I know a little about it.
Well, that's just a small sample of uncontrolled information. I can guarantee you the Patriots did not want Solid Snake's name publicized. Now, look at it like this. Political scandal, corporate corruption, up until now, the Patriots have managed to keep a lid on these and other self-serving events. But with their existing data processing system, they're no longer able to effectively control the flow of information generated at the individual level. With the newly created system, they can fully regulate digital information. High-level information can be categorized in stages, given clearance levels, and deleted as necessary, never to be seen by the public. By deleting such information, the Patriots can shape the course of history as they see fit.
Somebody's bound to catch on.
No, the memory capacity, not to mention the lifespan of the average individual, is extremely limited. On the other hand, digital information lasts virtually forever. It doesn't deteriorate.
So?
The alphabet, 26 letters, right? It could have been 30 letters. What if the 4 deleted letters were controlled by a program?
Impossible.
It's not. In fact, something similar is already underway. Do you know how many genes exist in an individual?
About 30 to 40,000?
Right, that's what was announced at the turn of the century, but there's actually 100,000 according to the original theory advanced by the scientific community. Information regarding the remaining 60,000 was suppressed by the Patriots.
No.
Why? How would you know? Do you know what a gene looks like? Did you count them yourself?
There are research organizations.
Of course, and their reports have already been subtly altered. They're even beginning to believe the doctored reports. GW is a system that allows the Patriots to decide what will be recorded in tomorrow's history.
So what we're talking about is one huge censorship system for deleting information which might be inconvenient to the Patriots.
Exactly. The actual physical core for handling the task, GW, is installed in Arsenal. It's the only system in the world with an optic neural AI that has a parallel processing capacity of 980 trillion Hammets.
I suppose that being a specialist in neural AI and complex logic played a significant role in your association with the Metal Gear project.
That's not the only reason.
What do you mean? I guess there are plenty of other reasons.
Yes, there are.
I understand.
Do you?
So Arsenal Gear was actually designed to protect the GW system, wasn't it?
Yes. It's armed with everything, including nuclear weapons, and is fully equipped with cyber-terrorist countermeasures. Physically and logically, it's the ultimate fortress for housing GW.
But is the AI actually capable of controlling everything?
No. GW is only the system's core. It's only for deciding what data is stored or deleted. The actual subsystem for executing the task exists within our social structure.
What?
Now, I want to explore how this game is actually a simulation. It's kind of meta, isn't it? The video game simulation is actually a simulation. But the question of simulating what? When looking at it from its bare bones, it's a simulation of the Shadow Moses incident, which if you played this game and know the story like the back of your hand, you're saying obviously in the comment section. It's good to know we're all in agreement. Back to the comparison. Metal Gear Solid 2's connection with Metal Gear Solid 1 is a fascinating example of how a sequel can both mirror and subvert its predecessor. At first glance, MGS2 does seem like a carbon copy of MGS1's story structure, but this similarity is intentional and serves a deeper narrative purpose. The game starts off feeling very familiar to fans of the first game. You're infiltrating a facility to stop a terrorist threat and a new Metal Gear. You have similar codec conversations, face off against quirky boss characters, and even revisit plot points like a virus that targets specific genes. This sense of deja vu is highlighted by the fact that many of the characters explicitly reference events from Shadow Moses. Heart attacks, most important hostages dying, and most importantly, a cyborg ninja. The entire Big Shell incident is revealed to be an elaborate recreation of the Shadow Moses incident designed as part of the S3 plan. Solid Snake simulation. This plan aims to create soldiers capable of handling complex, chaotic situations by putting them through a control exercise mimicking Solid Snake's experience. This revelation turns the game's apparent lack of originality into a meta commentary on sequels, player expectations, and the nature of reality itself. Raiden as the player's avatar is being put through a simulation of MGS1's events, just as the player themselves are going through a similar yet different experience to the first game. Since it's obvious now that the game was a simulation of the first, and there's a few changes that influence the story itself, let's look at and question how this game is also a metaphor for free will. At its core, the game puts players in the role of Raiden, a character who believes he's acting of his own volition, but is actually being manipulated at every turn. This mirrors our own lives, where we often think we are making free choices but are influenced by unseen forces, societal norms, advertising, or integrated beliefs. The Patriots, the shadowy organization controlling the events from behind the scenes, represent these external influences that shape our decisions with our knowledge. Looking at the other definition of the S3 plan, selection for societal sanity, further emphasizes this idea. It's revealed that the entire Big Shell incident was a carefully constructed simulation designed to create a perfect soldier, essentially a way to control and shape an individual's development. This can be seen as a metaphor for how society and culture mold us, potentially limiting our true free will. As the game progresses and the nature of Raiden's manipulation becomes clear, it raises questions about the nature of free will itself. If our experiences and memories shape who we are and how we think, and those can be manipulated, do we truly have free will? The game doesn't provide a clear answer, instead encouraging players to grapple with this philosophical quandary. The final act of the game, however, offers a glimmer of hope. When Raiden rejects his dog tag with my name on it and chooses his own path, it symbolizes the potential for individuals to break free from external control and assert their own free will. This moment suggests that while our choices may be influenced by external factors, true free will comes from recognizing these influences and consciously choosing to accept or reject them.
By the way, what is that?
Dog tags.
Anyone you know?
No, never heard the name before. I'll pick my own name and my own life. I'll find something worth passing on.
The last theme I'll talk about before I get into character analysis is the most important theme in the game: meme. Before we jump into this theme, I need to define it so we're all on the same page. A meme is defined as a unit of cultural information that spreads from person to person through imitation. The term, coined by British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book The Selfish Gene, draws an analogy between the way cultural ideas propagate and the way biological genes replicate. Just as genes carry genetic information and undergo natural selection, memes carry cultural ideas, behaviors, and symbols, evolving and adapting as they move through different contexts and communities. Memes can take various forms, including ideas, phrases, behaviors, styles, or even tangible items like fashion trends. They are transmitted through various means such as writing, speech, rituals, and increasingly through digital platforms like social media. The process of sharing a meme often involves copying or remixing it, which can lead to variations that reflect the cultural context of the new audience. This adaptability is a key feature of memes. They can mutate over time, sometimes becoming more popular or relevant while others fade away. The concept of memes suggests that cultural evolution operates similarly to biological evolution. Memes that resonate with people tend to spread more effectively, while those that don't may become obsolete. This idea has led to the emergence of a field called memetics, which studies how memes replicate and evolve within cultures. Some scholars argue that memes can be beneficial or harmful depending on their content and the context in which they spread. Now that we understand the definition, let me explain how it's the central theme of this game. The game introduces the concept of memes through its characters, particularly the Patriots AI and Colonel Campbell. They discuss memes as units of cultural information that spread from person to person, shaping beliefs, behavior, and societal norms. This aligns closely with Richard Dawkins' original definition of memes. MGS2 portrays the Patriots as manipulators of memes on a grand scale. They control the flow of digital information, effectively curating what memes spread through society. This represents how powerful entities can shape public opinion and cultural evolution by controlling information. The S3 plan is essentially a large-scale experiment in memetic engineering. The entire Big Shell incident, it's designed as a recreation of the Shadow Moses incident from MGS1, essentially replicating that event as a meme to shape Raiden's experience. This demonstrates how memes can be intentionally crafted and spread to influence society. Looking at Raiden himself, he's molded to be a replica of Solid Snake, imitating his actions and experiences from the first game. He's been subjected to a carefully controlled set of experiences, memes, designed to mold him into a specific type of person. This reflects how our cultural environment shapes our identities and beliefs. The game's meta-narrative aspects, where it constantly subverts players' expectations, can also be seen as a commentary on memes. Recurring gameplay elements like the cardboard box, codec calls, and stealth mechanics are memes carried over from previous games. It even has references to other media, adding nods to movies like Godzilla and King Kong, spreading these cultural references as memes. By playing with familiar tropes and then turning them on their head, MGS2 forces players to question the memes of video game storytelling they've internalized. Finally, the game's ending monologue discusses the importance of passing on diverse memes to future generations, rather than just comfortable, convenient truths. This emphasizes the role of memes in cultural evolution and the danger of allowing a single entity to control this process. Through these elements, MGS2 uses memes as a metaphor to explore themes of information control, cultural evolution, the malleability of truth in the digital age. It presents a world where those who control memes effectively control society, making a present commentary on the power of information in shaping our world.
Life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just DNA. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.
Okay, now I'll be covering each of the characters in the order they were shown throughout the story. We're starting first with Solid Snake. The main character from the first 3 entries make a return. So in MGS2, Snake takes on a different role than what we're used to seeing. He's not the main playable character for most of the game, but instead serves as a mentor figure and a driving force behind the scenes. It's like Kojima is playing with our expectations, giving us glimpses of the hero we all know and love, but in a new context. Snake's purpose in this game is multifaceted. On one level, he's there to guide Raiden through the complex situation on the Big Shell. He's the experienced veteran, providing insight and support. But on a deeper level, Snake represents a connection to the truth in the game that's all about deception and manipulation. He's actively working to uncover the conspiracy behind the Big Shell incident and the Patriots. Character-wise, we see a more mature Snake in this game. He's no longer the soldier from the first game. He's grown into his own legendary status, but he's not comfortable with it. There's a world weariness to him, a sense that he's seen too much and knows the world is more complex than simple heroics can solve. Yet, despite this, he hasn't given up. He's still fighting, still trying to make a difference. Snake's arc in the game is subtle but important. He starts off as this almost mythical figure appearing and disappearing mysteriously, but as the game progresses, we see more of his human side. He forms a bond with Raiden, showing a genuine concern for the rookie's well-being. By the end, he's not just a legend, but a real person fighting for what he believes in. There's also an interesting meta aspect to Snake's role in Metal Gear Solid 2. In many ways, he represents the player's expectations from the first game. By subverting those expectations and putting Snake into a supporting role, Kojima is commenting on the nature of sequels and the relationship between games and players. In the end, Snake's presence in Metal Gear Solid 2 serves to ground the game's more outlandish elements. Amidst the twists and turns, the virtual reality questions, and the philosophical ponderings, Snake remains constant. He's a reminder of the series' roots and bridge between the familiar and the new. It's a tricky balance, but I think it's one that Metal Gear Solid 2 pulls off brilliantly.
Come on, time to go. If you run out of ammo, you can have mine.
You got enough?
Absolutely. Infinite ammo.
Next up, we move on to Otacon, another character returning from the Shadow Moses incident. In MGS2, Otacon has really come into his own. He's no longer the nervous, socially awkward scientist we met in the first game. Now, he's Snake's trusted partner in philanthropy, their anti-Metal Gear organization. It's like he found his purpose, you know? He's using his tech skills for good, trying to make up for his past mistakes with Rex. But man, Otacon just can't catch a break when it comes to loss. In the first game, we saw how Sniper Wolf's death really hit him hard. Now in MGS2, he's dealing with the loss of his stepsister, Emma. It's like the poor guy is defined by these tragic relationships. You can really feel his pain when Emma dies in his arms. It's a gut-wrenching moment that shows how much Otacon has grown emotionally since the first game. What's interesting about Otacon in MGS2 is how he serves as both support for Snake and as a character with his own arc. He's not just the guy on the other end of the codec anymore. He's actively involved in the mission, even infiltrating the Big Shell himself. It's like he's trying to prove that he can do more than just sit behind a computer. We also get more of Otacon's past in this game, and boy is it complicated. The whole thing with his stepmother and father's self-deletion adds layers to his character. It explains why he's so driven to do good now. He's carrying around a lot of guilt. Despite all the heavy stuff, Otacon still brings some lightness to the game. His love for anime and his awkward attempt at humor provides some much needed relief from the game's intense plot. It's like Kojima is using him to balance out Snake's seriousness. By the end of MGS2, Otacon has really grown. He's no longer just Snake's sidekick. He's a crucial part of the team. He's faced his past, dealt with more loss, and come out stronger. He's still got his quirks, but he's also got a newfound confidence. It's like he's finally becoming the hero he always wanted to be, just in his own unique, tech-savvy way.
I'd only get in your way.
Wrong. Only you can save those hostages. Got it?
Right. Listen, the two of you won't be able to destroy that thing. Eliminate the enemy. That's your only option.
Moving on to another Shadow Moses OG, we got Revolver Ocelot. In MGS2, Ocelot is playing a seriously complex game of chess. On the surface, he appears to be Solidus Snake's right-hand man, helping orchestrate the takeover of the Big Shell. But as always with Ocelot, things are never quite that simple. He's actually working as a triple agent, serving Solidus, the Patriots, and his own agenda all at once. Talk about juggling acts. What's fascinating about Ocelot in this game is how he evolved from MGS1. He's no longer the sadistic torturer with a fondness for revolvers. Now he's a master manipulator, pulling the strings behind the scenes. Remember that twist with Liquid's arm? That's classic Ocelot, always keeping everyone, including the player, guessing. But here's the kicker. While Ocelot seems to be this puppet master, he's actually still a puppet himself. The Patriots are the ones really calling the shots, and Ocelot is dancing to their tune. Even if he doesn't fully realize it, it's like he's caught in this web of manipulation, both manipulating others and being manipulated himself. Pretty ironic for a guy who prides himself on being in control, right? Ocelot's purpose in MGS2 is multifaceted. He's there to keep the plot moving, to be this constant wildcard that keeps both the characters and the players on their toes. But he's also there to embody the game's themes of information control and the nature of reality. His actions and motivations are always shrouded in mystery, mirroring the game's overall message about the unreliability of information. As for his character arc, it's subtle but significant. We see Ocelot becoming more comfortable in his role as a behind-the-scenes puppet master. He's no longer just the guy with fancy gun tricks. He's orchestrating entire scenarios, playing everyone against each other. It's like he's leveling up in the game of espionage and manipulation. The whole liquid arm possession is a brilliant twist that sets up his character for future games. It adds this supernatural element to his character that fits perfectly with the increasingly bizarre world of Metal Gear. Plus, it gives us a hint at the internal struggle going on within Ocelot, setting the stage for his eventual transformation into Liquid Ocelot in a later entry.
Excellent speech, my friend.
Who the?
Gift of the silver tongue. They say it's the mark of a good officer. And of a liar. Americans are too in love with the sound of their own voice to speak the truth.
Identify yourself.
I am Shalashaska, also called Revolver Ocelot.
All right, let's dive into Sergei Golukovich's character in MGS2. This guy is an interesting piece of the Metal Gear puzzle, especially considering how he was just a name drop in the first game. So remember in Metal Gear Solid, when Ocelot mentioned meeting up with a group colonel after Shadow Moses? Well, here's a refresher.
Military power with nuclear weapons? Golukovich, he's no warrior, he's a politician.
Well, he's the one who gave us the Hind and most of our other heavy firepower.
He's got over 1,000 soldiers under his command. If we join forces, we could put up quite a resistance here. Since Mantis died, the Genome Soldiers' brainwashing has started to wear off. I'm worried about the men's morale. An alliance with the Russians would boost that as well.
What are you saying?
We're not going anywhere. We're going to dig in here.
We could still escape.
We've got the most powerful weapon ever made, and we're about to ally with Golukovich's forces.
Are you going to fight the whole world?
And what's wrong with that? We can launch a nuclear warhead at any target on this planet. A nuclear warhead invisible to radar. And on top of that, this base is full of spare nuclear warheads. Once we get the DNA and the money, the world will be ours.
What about your promise to Colonel Golukovich?
I have no interest in the revival of Mother Russia.
You're not thinking of reviving Big Boss's dream.
From today, call this place Outer Heaven.
It's pretty cool how Kojima took this throwaway line and turned it into a full-fledged character in MGS2. In Sons of Liberty, Sergei finally steps into the spotlight as this hardened Russian military veteran. He's the leader of a private army, and he's got this whole Russia will rise again vibe going on. It's like he's stuck in the past, you know? He can't just let go of the Soviets' glory days, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to bring Russia back to power. Sergei's purpose in the game is pretty multifaceted. On one level, he's there to provide some muscle for the initial takeover of the tanker, but on a deeper level, he represents this old guard of military thinking that's becoming obsolete in the face of the Patriots' New World Order. It's kind of tragic, really. His character arc is short but impactful. We see him as the strong, determined leader at the start of the tanker chapter. He's got his daughter Olga by his side, and he's ready to take on the world. But as things start to unravel, we see his vulnerability. There's this great moment where he tells Olga to leave, showing that despite his tough exterior, he really does care about his family. The way Sergei goes out is pretty telling of his character too. He stands up to Ocelot, refusing to go back down even when it's clear that he's been betrayed. It's like he'd rather die standing than live on his knees, you know? It's a bit of cliche, but it fits his character perfectly. In the end, Sergei Golukovich serves as this tragic figure in Metal Gear Solid 2. He's a man of time, clinging to old ideas and a world that's moved on. His death marks the end of an era and sets the stage for the new conflicts that dominate the rest of the game. It's a small role, but it's one that adds a lot of depth to the game's exploration of loyalty, nationalism, and the changing face of welfare.
What do you intend to do with Ray? Sell it on the streets?
I was raised in Snezinsk, formerly known as Chelyabinsk 70, the nuclear research outpost.
What are you talking about?
After the Cold War ended, my home was bought out by the Americans.
Is there a point to this sad story?
None you would understand. Land, friends, dignity, all sold to the highest bidder, the United States of America. Even the technology that gave birth to these weapons is Russian, developed by us.
What do you intend to do?
Russia will rise again. And Ray is the key.
Alright, let's dive into Olga Gurlukovich's character in MGS2. She's a fascinating figure who goes through quite a journey in this game. So we first meet Olga on the tanker, right? She's this tough as nails Russian soldier, pregnant and all, but is still ready to throw down with Solid Snake. It's a great introduction that shows her dedication to her father's cause and her skills as a fighter. But that's just the beginning of her story. Fast forward 2 years and Olga's in a completely different situation. Her father's dead, her baby's been taken by the Patriots, and she's forced to play this complex double agent role. It's like she's caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to protect her child while also helping Raiden Snake. Talk about a tough spot. What's really interesting about Olga is how she becomes this generation cyborg ninja, following the footsteps of Gray Fox in the first Metal Gear Solid. It's a clever callback that adds depth to her character. Just like Gray Fox, she's this mysterious figure who shows up to help the hero at crucial moments. She even uses that classic line, "Unlike you, I have no name." She even has the same codec number as Fox did in the first game, 140.48. It's a nice nod to the fans while also establishing her as a key player in the story. Olga's purpose in the game is multifaceted. On one level, she's there to help guide Raiden through the Big Shell incident, much like Gray Fox did for Snake. But on a deeper level, she represents the human cost of the Patriots' machinations. Her struggle to protect her child while being forced to assist in the S3 plan really drives home how ruthless and far-reaching the Patriots' control is. Her character arc is all about sacrifice and redemption. She starts off as an enemy and becomes an unwilling pawn, and ultimately sacrifices herself to save Raiden and, by extension, her own child. It's a tragic but powerful journey that really tugs at your heartstrings. In the end, Olga's story is a part of what makes MGS2's narrative so complex and engaging. She's not just a side character or a simple ally. She's a fully realized person caught in the web of the game's larger themes of control, manipulation, and a search for identity. Her final scene, where she gives her life to protect Raiden, is one of the most powerful moments in the game. It really drives home the personal cost of the conflicts we've been playing through.
So you decided to show yourself.
Olga, don't do this! They'll know!
I'll hold them off. Give you time to get away.
What about you? This is suicide!
Your nanomachines, they're transmitting your vital signs to the Patriots. If you die, my child dies. You understand?
The child.
I see. So that's why you sold your troops out to me. So many dead, and they all died trusting you! Weren't they your comrades?
No, not just comrades. Family! I know I'm going to help, but at least my child.
I applaud your attitude. If you have a death wish, I'll be happy to accommodate you. See you in hell!
Olga!
Alright, let's talk about Scott Dolph, the Marine Commandant who makes a brief but memorable appearance at MGS2. Scott Dolph, one of those characters who doesn't really stick around for long, but he sure makes an impact. We meet him during the Tanker chapter, where he's giving this impassioned speech about the new Metal Gear rank. It's clear from the get-go that this guy is proud of his work and believes in what he's doing. He's got this air of authority about him, you know? But here's the thing, Dolph's role in the game is really to set up the bigger picture. His speech gives us a lot of info about Rey and the political situation, but it also shows us how the military views these new weapons. It's like the voice of the establishment, all gung-ho about this new tech without really considering the consequences. Of course, things don't always end well for poor Scott. His death at the hands of Ocelot is a major turning point in the Tanker chapter. It's shocking and sudden, and it really drives home how ruthless Ocelot and how high the stakes are in this game. In the end, Scott Dolph's character serves to give us context for the world of MGS2 and to kick off the action of the Tanker chapter. He's not around for long, but his presence and his fate have a big impact on the story and on how we understand the world Snake is operating in.
We, the Marines, will lead the charge into a new world order with Metal Gear Ray. That is all. Dismissed.
Alright, let's dive into Raiden's character. This guy's journey is a real mind bender, and it's at the heart of what makes MGS2 such a fascinating game. So, we start off with Raiden, this seemingly rookie Foxhound operative who's all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But as the game progresses, we realize there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. His real name is Jack, which is a clever nod to Jack Dawson from Titanic. Just like Jack in the movie, our Raiden is thrust into a situation way over his head, dealing with forces much larger than himself. It's a subtle way of hinting at the themes of manipulation and control that run through the game. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Raiden isn't just a character, he's a stand-in for the player. Kojima uses him as a way to mess with our expectations. We all wanted to play as Solid Snake again, right? But instead we get this new guy who's basically a blank slate. It's like Kojima is saying, you want to be the hero? Well, here you go. But it's not going to be what you expect. As the game progresses, we start to see Raiden's true background emerge. He's not just some rookie. He's a child soldier with a dark past, trained by Solid Snake. This revelation adds layers to his character and ties into the game's themes of identity and manipulation. Raiden's journey is all about breaking free from the control of others and finding his own identity. Now, let's talk about the Gray Fox connection. It's pretty clear that Kojima was trying to position Raiden as a new Gray Fox figure. Both are skilled warriors with tragic pasts who look up to Solid Snake. But while Gray Fox was a mentor figure in MGS1, Raiden is more of a protege in MGS2. He's learning from Snake, trying to live up to the legend he's heard about so much. But here's the real kicker. By the end of the game, Raiden starts to reject his role as Snake's clone. He literally throws away his dog tags, which have the player's name on them, and chooses to forge his own path. It's a powerful moment that represents Raiden breaking free from both the player's control and the expectations placed on him by the game's world. In the end, Raiden's purpose in MGS2 is multifaceted. He's a player's surrogate, a commentary on fan expectations and character exploring themes of identity and free will. His arc takes him from a manipulated pawn to someone who chooses his own destiny. It's a complex journey that mirrors the game's larger themes about information control and the nature of reality itself.
They taught me some good things too.
I know. We've inherited freedom from all those who fought for it. We all have the freedom to spread the word, even me.
Snake, what about Olga's child?
Don't worry, I'll find him. Count on it. As long as you keep yourself alive, he's safe.
Now let's make our way to a character that plays with our mind. At first glance, the Colonel in MGS2 seems like the same old Campbell we know and love from the first game. He's there on your Kodak giving you mission briefings and advice just like he did for Solid Snake. It's comforting, you know? Like having an old friend guiding you through this crazy new mission. But as you progress through the game, things start to feel off. The Colonel's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. He starts saying things that don't quite add up. And his reactions to certain events seem a bit out of character. It's subtle at first, but it grows more noticeable as the game goes on. And then bam, the big reveal hits you like a truck. This isn't the real Colonel Campbell at all. It's an AI construct part of the Patriots' elaborate S3 plan. Talk about a plot twist. It's a brilliant move by Kojima, using our own familiarity with and trust in Campbell to mess with both Raiden and the player. The AI kernel serves a dual purpose in the game. On one level, he's there to guide Raiden, and by extension the player, throughout the mission, just like a real mission controller would. But on a deeper level, he represents the manipulation at the heart of the entire Big Shell incident. He's the voice of the Patriots, literally controlling and shaping Raiden's reality. As the game progresses and the AI starts to break down, we get these bizarre, glitchy codec calls that really drive home how artificial this kernel is. It's unsettling, but it's also a perfect representation of the themes of reality and manipulation that MGS2 explores. In the end, the AI kernel is a brilliant narrative device. He starts as a familiar, trustworthy figure, then slowly transforms into something alien and unsettling, mirroring Raiden's journey from confident agent to confused pawn. It's a masterclass in using player expectations against them, and it's one of the many reasons MGS2's story is so memorable.
Raiden, do you copy? You must continue your mission.
I've lost all my gear. I need to locate Snake.
He was never factored into the simulation. Leave him out of this.
I can't do much naked, especially in this temperature.
That's true. You won't be able to attack or enter the hanging mode either.
I think Snake has my gear.
Raiden, take out Solidus and his men. You must recover Arsenal intact.
Colonel, are you under orders from the Patriots?
Your role, that is, mission, is to infiltrate the structure and disarm the terrorists.
My role? Why do you keep saying that?
Why not? This is a type of role-playing game. The point is that you play out your part, and I expect you to turn in a perfect performance.
Colonel, I just remembered something.
What?
That I've never met you in person. Not once.
Complete your mission according to the simulation.
Colonel, who are you?
No more questions. We have Rosemary.
What do you mean by that?
Over and out.
All right, let's dive into Rosemary's character. She's a fascinating and often misunderstood character who adds a whole new layer to the game's themes. First off, let's talk about Rose's inspiration. Kojima drew from multiple sources, including the movie Titanic, just like Rose DeWitt Bukater in the film. Our Rose is caught between duty and love, trying to navigate a complex situation while dealing with a man who's not always easy to understand. It's a clever nod that adds depth to her character. Now, here's a fun tidbit. Rose's persistent questioning about April 30th wasn't just random game dialogue. It was actually inspired by Kojima's own life. Apparently, while he and his wife were engaged, she kept asking him when they'd get married. Kojima, being the creative genius he is, worked this personal experience into the game. It's these little touches that make MGS2 so unique. Rose's purpose in the game is multifaceted. On the surface, she's there as mission support and to save your progress. But dig deeper and you see she's crucial to the game's exploration of reality, identity, and manipulation. She's the emotional anchor for Raiden, but she's also part of the system that's manipulating him. It's a brilliant contradiction that keeps players guessing. Her character arc is a roller coaster. We start off thinking she's just Raiden's girlfriend, then discover she's a Patriot agent, and finally learn she's even been manipulated. It's a journey that mirrors the game's themes of layers of deception and the search for truth. One of the coolest moments with Rose comes when she's removed from Raiden's mission support. Did you notice how her voice seemed to deepen? It's eerily similar to HAL 9000's demise in 2001: A Space Odyssey. This subtle detail hints at her artificial nature and ties into the game's exploration of AI and control. In the end, Rose is a character who embodies the game's central question: what is real? Her relationship with Raiden, her role in the mission, even her own identity, all of these are called into question. She's not just a love interest or a mission support character. She's a crucial part of MGS2's mind-bending narrative. Lover or hater, you can't deny that Rose adds a unique dimension to MGS2. She brings emotional complexity to a game that could have been just another action title, and her story entwines with the game's themes in ways that are still being discussed 2 decades later. That's pretty impressive for a character who started off just asking you to save your game data.
Snake?
What's wrong?
Nothing. Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
See me for what I am, okay?
I know.
Alright, let's dive into the enigmatic and downright creepy character of Vamp. This guy is like something straight out of a horror movie, but with a Metal Gear twist. First off, let's talk about Vamp's background. He hails from Romania, which is pretty fitting giving his whole vampire shtick. I mean, Romania is home to Transylvania, the stomping grounds of the OG vampire himself, Count Dracula. It's a clever nod by Kojima and his team, adding an extra layer of mystique to Vamp's character. Now, Vamp's appearance is something else entirely. Yoji Shinkawa, the artistic genius behind many of Metal Gear's iconic designs, based Vamp's look on the flamenco dancer Joaquin Cortez. It's an unexpected inspiration, but it totally works. You can see it in Vamp's fluid, almost dance-like movements and his flair for the dramatic. It's like he's performing a deadly ballad every time he shows up on the screen. In MGS2, Vamp serves as one of the members of Dead Cell, and boy does he make an impression. He's introduced as this seemingly supernatural being who can do impossible things like run on water and survive fatal wounds. His purpose in the game is twofold. He's there to be a formidable opponent for Raiden, but he's also there to make us question what's real and what's not in this world. Vamp's character arc is interesting because it's not so much about his personal growth, but it's about our perception of him. At first, we see him as this inhuman monster with unexplainable abilities, but as the game progresses and we learn more about the world of Metal Gear, we start to question whether there's a more scientific explanation for his powers. One of the most memorable things about Vamp is his relationship with Fortune. There's this weird, almost codependent dynamic between them that adds another layer to his character. It's not just about being a badass villain. There's a human element there, twisted as it may be. Vamp's boss fights are some of the most challenging and memorable in the game. The way he uses the environment, particularly in that fight where you can pin your shadow, is just brilliant game design. It forces you to think outside the box and adds to the supernatural feel of his character. In the end, Vamp is more than just a vampire-themed bad guy. He's a representation of the blurred line between science and the supernatural in the Metal Gear universe. He keeps us guessing right up until the end, and that's what makes him such a fascinating character. Alright, let's dive into Fortune's character. So Fortune, also known as Helena Dolph Jackson, is this incredibly tragic figure in MGS2. Her whole life is like a series of unfortunate events that will make Lemony Snicket blush. It all starts with the death of her father, Scott Dolph, during the tanker incident in the beginning of the game. That's the event that sets her on this path of revenge against Solid Snake, who she believes is responsible for her father's death. But it doesn't stop there. After her father's death, her husband is accused of corruption and self-deletes himself in prison. Then her mother takes her own life, and to top all of it off, Fortune miscarries her unborn child. I mean, talk about a rough deal. It's no wonder she ends up joining Dead Sun, becoming this fatalistic, death-seeking character. Now let's talk about her relationship with Vamp. These two have this really intense, almost codependent bond. Vamp calls her queen, which is just loaded with meaning. It's like he sees her as this regal, untouchable figure, and he's her loyal subject. Their relationship is one of the more intriguing aspects of Fortune's character, adding depth to what could have been, on a note, tragic villain trope. Fortune's purpose in the game is really interesting. On the surface, she's this seemingly invincible enemy that Raiden has to face, but on a deeper level, she represents the theme of fate and predetermined destiny that runs through in GS2. Her luck in battle, which turns out to be manipulated by the Patriots, is a perfect example of how the game plays with the ideas of free will and control. Her character arc is all about coming to terms with her past and her place in the world. At the start, she's this vengeful, death-seeking missile, but as the truth about her father's death and her own manipulated luck comes to light, we see her start to question everything she thought she knew.
Just a part of your project? How could...
You're no Lady Luck. You have nothing that we didn't give you.
What?
Alright, let's dive into Peter Stillman's character. This guy is a real roller coaster, and he plays a crucial role in the Big Shell incident. Peter Stillman is introduced as this legendary NYPD bomb disposal expert who's been brought in to help deal with Fat Man's explosives. At first glance, he seems like your typical mentor character. He's experienced, knowledgeable, and their guide to Raiden through the complexities of bomb disposal. But with everything in MGS2, there's more to Stillman than meets the eye. Here's a cool bit of trivia for you. Stillman's name is actually a reference to one of the assumed names of the lead character in the New York trilogy novel City of Glass. In fact, he's the only character with a name referencing that novel to make it into the final version of the game. It's these little literary nods that really show how much thought Kojima put into his characters. Now, Stillman's character arc is all about redemption and facing one's past mistakes. As we learn more about him, we discover that he's been living with this massive guilt over a failed bomb disposal in a church that cost many lives. He's been faking a leg injury as a sort of self-imposed penance, and his involvement in the Big Shot incidents is his way of trying to make amends. Stillman's purpose in the game goes beyond just being a bomb disposal expert. He represents the theme of truth versus lies that runs through MGS2. His depiction about this inquiry mirrors the larger deceptions that play in the game's plot. When he finally confesses the truth to Raiden, it's a powerful moment that foreshadows the revelations to come. The tragic irony of Stillman's arc is that he's found the courage to face his past and move forward. He falls victim to one of Fat Man's bombs. His death serves as a turning point in the narrative, raising the stakes and showing the real danger of the situation Raiden is in.
What is it?
I fell for it.
Fell for what?
Fat Man has my number. A proximity trigger. Microwave.
Microwave?
With a 7-foot range. It's not a technique I taught him. Neither was that multi-bomb booby trap. Looks like he's far surpassed me as far as explosives technique goes. As for the rest...
Pete, get the hell out of there!
There's less than 30 seconds left. It's too late.
No!
Pliskin, get away from Strut H as fast as you can.
Pete!
Raiden, keep your distance. Use the spray from as far away as possible.
Me?
You can do it. I know that.
I'm not so sure.
But I am. Do it. I know you can.
Alright, let's dive into Fat Man's character. This guy is one of the most eccentric and memorable villains in the game, and that's saying something in a series known for its over-the-top characters. Fat Man is introduced as a member of Dead Cell, the rogue special forces unit that's taken over the Big Shell facility. Right off the bat, he stands out with this bizarre appearance. A fat man in a bomb disposal suit road skating around and sipping wine through a straw. It's like Kojima decided to mash up a bomb excerpt with a decadent aristocrat, and somehow it works. His backstory is pretty interesting. Fat Man was a child prodigy in explosives, having built his first bomb at just 10 years old. He was trained by Peter Stillman, the same bomb disposal expert who's helping Raiden. But Fat Man's genius turned into madness, and he became obsessed with leaving his mark on the world through destruction. It's a classic tale of a brilliant mind gone wrong, but with that unique Metal Gear twist. In terms of his purpose in the game, Fat Man serves as both a physical and psychological obstacle for Raiden. His bombs scattered throughout the Big Shell create a constant sense of tension and urgency. But more than that, he represents the unpredictable nature of the threats Raiden faces. While other enemies might be motivated by ideology or revenge, Fat Man is driven purely by a desire for fame and recognition. Fat Man's character arc, while short, it's impactful. Throughout his appearances, we see his desperation for acknowledgement growth. He becomes increasingly unhinged as Raiden continues to foil his plans. By the time of their final confrontation, Fat Man has devolved into a ranting madman, revealing the insecurity behind his bombastic interior. The boss fight against Fat Man is one of the most memorable in the game. It's this bizarre dance of dodging his roller skating charges while trying to defuse bombs and take him down. It perfectly encapsulates the mix of tension and absurdity that Metal Gear Solid is known for.
I've nothing to wear to the party.
The party's over for you.
That's what you think.
What do you mean? What did you just do? What is this?
I have beautiful hands. These delicate hands can craft works of art.
Answer me, what the hell is this?
It's the switch for the biggest bomb in the entire place.
Huh?
No use. Once it's activated, there's no stopping the count.
Where did you plant it? Where is it?
Somewhere in this area. Don't worry, it's very close by.
Where is it?
Go ahead, shoot me, I'm already dead.
Damn!
Think you can find it? When it goes off, it'll take the Big Shell with it.
Tell me where I can find the bomb!
That's your problem. This is the highlight of the party. Bring it on, I say. They'll be happy too. I die here and start my legend. Too bad you won't be around to see the movies. Laugh and grow fat.
Richard Ames is introduced as a Secret Service agent, but as with everything in the Metal Gear universe, there's way more to him than meets the eye. He's actually a DIA operative working for the Patriots, which already puts him in a complex position. Ames is the kind of character that makes you question everything you think you know about the game's plot. His purpose in the game is multifaceted. On the surface, he's there to keep an eye on President Johnson, who the Patriots suspect might betray them. But dig a little deeper and you'll see that Ames is also a link to the events of the first game. He's got this history with Natasha Romanenko, the author of Into the Darkness of Shadow Moses, which adds another layer to the game's exploration of information control and manipulation. Now here's where things get really interesting. It's implied that the Patriots might have had more reasons to want Ames dead than just the S3 plan. Apparently, our man Ames leaked some sensitive info to Natasha and helped her escape. And get this, it's hinted that he was still in love with her, which is why he let her live. Talk about a guy caught between love and duty. Ames's character arc, while short, is pretty impactful. He goes from being this mysterious figure pulling the strings in the background to becoming a victim of the very system he was part of. His death by pacemaker shutdown is a chilling reminder of just how much control the Patriots have. Oh, and here's a bit of fun trivia for you. Ames might be a reference to Aldrich Ames, a real-life spy who infiltrated the CIA. Or if you're more into sci-fi literature, He could have been a nod to a character, Robert A. Helen, in the novel The Cat Who Walks Through Walls. Either way, it shows how Kojima loves to weave real world and literally references into his characters.
Sorry, Colonel. You failed to carry out your duties.
You'll never escape the Lali Lulelo.
Is that so? What the?
You tricked me. I understand now. Ocelot.
Let's dive into Solidus Snake's character. This guy is a fascinating mix of ambition, tragedy, and complexity, and he plays a crucial role in the game's intricate narrative. Solidus Snake, also known as George Sears, is one of the 3 clones of Big Boss created through the Les Enfants Terribles project. He was first hinted at in the post-credit dialogue of the original Metal Gear Solid, which was set for his full reveal in MGS2.
Yes, sir. The entire unit was wiped out. Those 2 are still alive. The Vector? Yes, sir. Fox Die should become activated soon, right on schedule. Yes, sir, I recovered all of Rex's dummy warhead data. No, sir, my cover is intact. Nobody knows who I really am. Yes, the DARPA chief knew my identity, but he's been disposed of. Yes, the inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one. Yes, sir, I agree completely. It takes a well-balanced individual such as yourself to rule the world. No, sir. No one knows that you were the 3rd one, Solidus. What should I do about the woman? Yes, sir. I'll keep her under surveillance. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.
As a clone, Solidus was designed to be the perfect balance between his brothers, Solid and Liquid Snake. This makes him a compelling figure caught between his genetic legacy and his own ambitions. In MGS2, Solidus serves as the primary antagonist, but his motivations are more complex than simple villainy. After falling from grace following the Shadow Moses incident, where he was ousted from his position as President of the United States, Solidus seeks revenge against the Patriots, the shadowy group controlling global events. His goal is to free humanity from their control, which he believes can only be achieved by destroying them and revealing their secrets. Solidus' connection to Raiden adds another layer to his character. He raised Raiden as a child soldier during the Liberian Civil War, essentially acting as a father figure. This relationship parallels that of Big Boss, with his sons adds emotional weight to their eventual confrontation. Solidus sees Raiden as both a tool and a legacy, hoping that by defeating him he can cement his own place in history. Throughout MGS2, Solidus is often referenced to as King, completing the face card analogy with Raiden as Jack and Fortune as Queen. This moniker highlights his leadership role and his desire for power and control. However, it also underscores his tragic flaw. Like King out of time, he's fighting a battle that's already been lost in many ways. Solidus' character arc is one of ambition, thwarted by manipulation. Despite his noble intentions to liberate humanity from the Patriots' grip, he ultimately becomes another pawn in their game. His downfall is both literal and metaphorical. After a climactic battle with Raiden atop Arsenal Gear, he meets his end not as a liberator, but as another casualty of the Patriots' machinations.
Rocket!
Moving on, James Johnson starts off as the President of the United States, which already puts him in a pretty interesting position in the Metal Gear universe. But here's a kicker. He's not really in charge. The Patriots, that shadowy organization pulling all the strings, they're the ones really running the show. Johnson's basically a puppet president, and man, does that eat away at him. So what does he do? He decides to play along with Solid Snake's takeover of the Big Shell facility. His plan? To get his hands on Arsenal gear and its AI GW. He figures if he can control that, he can finally break free from the Patriots' control and actually wield some real power. It's a classic case of a man trying to break free from his chains, only to end up tangling himself even more. But here's where Johnson's character arc gets really interesting. When Raiden finally reaches him, Johnson has this moment of clarity. He realizes just how deep the Patriots' control goes and how futile his efforts have been. It's a pretty heavy moment watching a man come to terms with the fact that everything he's been fighting for has been part of someone else's plan all along. In that moment, Johnson makes a choice that defines his character. He decides to give up his life for his country. It's not just about dying, it's about refusing to play the Patriots game anymore. He tells Raiden everything he knows, effectively turning his back on the conspiracy he was a part of. It's a redemptive moment for Johnson, showing that even a pawn can choose to leave the board. Of course, the tragedy of Johnson's character is that even this act of defiance was probably part of the Patriots' plan. He's just another piece in their elaborate chess game. His rebellion and death likely calculated and accounted for. It's a stark reminder of just how all-encompassing the Patriots' control is in this world. In the end, James Johnson serves as a perfect example of the themes of control, free will that have run through MGS2. His struggle against manipulation, his moment of clarity, and his final act of defiance all contribute to the game's exploration of what it means to have agency in a world where everything seems predetermined. It's heavy stuff, but it's what makes Metal Gear Solid 2 such a fascinating game to dive into.
Now, kill me.
What the?
There's no time to argue. The final check for my vital ID will start any second. If you kill me now, you'll at least prevent the nuclear strike.
Cut it out!
Do it! That's your role!
Oh!
No! Good!
That's abusing your right to free speech, Mr. President. Or is it ex-president?
The president! Why did you...
Alas, my finger must have slipped. I'll see you around, carrier boy.
Forget him. He did us a favor. Without free will, there is no difference between submission and rebellion. My only real choice is to put an end to this charade. Let me at least have the freedom to end it myself.
What are you...
Find Emma. Stop Arsenal. This is my last order as your commander-in-chief. I'm counting on you.
Moving along, Emma, or EE as she's often called, is Otacon's stepsister and a brilliant computer programmer in her own right. She's introduced as this key figure who can help take down the Patriots AI system GW, but man, there's so much more to her than just technical skills. First off, Emma's presence in the game really expands on Otacon's character. Through her, we get to see a whole new side of Hal Emmerich. We learn about their complicated past, including the tragedy that tore them apart. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing the guilt and regret that Otacon's been carrying around all the time. Their relationship adds emotional depth to Otacon that we hadn't seen before. Now let's talk about Emma's role in the bigger picture. She's a prodigy hacker who actually worked on creating GW, the AI at the heart of the Patriots control system. It's ironic, right? She helped build the very thing she's now trying to destroy. This puts her in a morally gray area that's so typical of Metal Gear characters. She's not just a damsel in distress, she's a key player in the whole conspiracy. But here's where things get really interesting. Emma's story adds another chapter into the dark history of the Emmerich family. It's like there's this curse hanging over them, where they keep creating these incredible technologies that end up being used for destructive purposes. Her work on GW is just the latest in a long line of Emmerich inventions that have caused more harm than good. It's a legacy that weighs heavy on both her and Otacon. Emma's character arc is tragically short but impactful. We see her go from this isolated, somewhat bitter person to someone who's willing to face her fears and do what's right. Her journey across the oil fence facing her aquaphobia is both literal and metaphorical. She's confronting her past traumas and trying to move forward. And then there's the heartbreaking death scene. It's a gut punch moment that really drives home the personal cost of these grand conspiracies. Her death isn't just sad because we've grown to like her character. It's devastating because of what it means for Otacon and how it represents another failure in the Emmerich family line. In the end, Emma's character serves to humanize the larger-than-life plot of MGS2. She brings personal stakes to this grand narrative about information control and manipulation. Through her, we see the human cost of the Patriots' actions, and we get a deeper understanding of the emotional toll this whole mess takes on people like Otacon. She might not be around for long, but Emma Emmerich leaves a lasting impact on the Metal Gear story.
What's wrong with EE? Emma?
Now, last but not least, we have to analyze Liquid Snake. So Liquid Snake, we all thought we'd seen the last of him at the end of MGS1, right? He goes out with this dramatic death scene, succumbing to Fox Die just as he's about to finish off Solid Snake. Case closed. Or so we thought. But Kojima had other plans for our favorite megamaniacal twin. In MGS2, Liquid makes this jaw-dropping return, possessing Revolver Ocelot's body through his transplanted arm. Yeah, you heard that correctly. It's one of those plot twists that's so out there it loops back around to being awesome. This sudden reappearance is completely unexpected, catching both the characters and the players off guard. Liquid's purpose in MGS2 is twofold. First, he serves as this lingering threat, a reminder that the events of the Shadow Moses incident aren't fully resolved. He's like this ghost from the past, literally haunting the present through Ocelot. But more importantly, Liquid represents a supernatural element in MGS2. In a game that's about information control and the digital age, Liquid's seemingly mystical possession stands out as this bizarre, unexplainable phenomenon. His character arc in this game is pretty interesting, considering he's basically a part-time character. We see him struggling for control with Ocelot, popping at key moments to throw a wrench in everyone's plans. It's like this force of chaos refusing to be controlled or predicted even after death. The supernatural aspect of Liquid's appearance is crucial to the game's themes. MGS2 plays a lot with the idea of information and reality. What's real, what's not, what can be manipulated. Liquid's ghostly appearance adds this layer to the unexplainable, the mystical. In the end, Liquid's role in MGS2 is to keep us guessing. He's this wild card that pops in just when you think you've got everything figured out. His presence adds an element of the unknown to a game that's already messing with your head at every turn. It's classic Metal Gear. Just when you think you know the rules, Kojima changes the game entirely.
I've been inside this arm all along, waiting for the right time to awaken.
You were inside Ocelot?
Yes, a sleeper in the arm of a Patriot spy.
It was you 2 years ago?
Exactly. I was controlling him. Snake, it was I that leaked information about Arsenal to your partner and got you out here.
What?
You're the only one that can free me. After all...
Alright, let's dive into the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 2. Quick fact, this game is split into two parts, the tanker and the plant chapters. Since it's a stealth game, you already know the basics. Stick to the shadows and avoid detection. But MGS2 takes the stealth mechanics from the original and levels them up in some pretty cool ways. First off, MGS2 introduced the option to knock out enemies instead of just killing them. You can use tranquilizers like the M9 or PSG-1T to keep things quiet, which is great when you're caught in a tight spot and want a non-lethal option. A big improvement over the original is how enemy bodies behave. In the first game, bodies would just disappear after a guard was taken out. In MGS2, they stick around, meaning you have to think about hiding them. Lockers were added so you can stash bodies out of sight, whether they're knocked out or down for good. It's up to you. You can even use lockers to hide yourself when the heat is on. Alerts got an upgrade too. Instead of instantly triggering a full alert when spotted, guards first try to call for backup. If you're quick, you can stop them before they use their radio, preventing the alert altogether. But if they do manage to call for help, you'll see guards investigating the area for a while. This new caution phase adds a realistic, intense layer to staying hidden. If you're a difficulty junkie, the Substance and HD collection versions add European Extreme Mode, which is brutal. We'll get more into that later in the port section. The slow time radar also returns, but on higher difficulties in the plant chapter, Raiden has to activate a node to get radar access. Alerts will knock it offline just like the first game, so staying undetected is still key. One of the most exciting additions is the first-person aiming mode. In MGS1, you could only look in first person. Here, you can aim precisely. Almost every firearm has laser sights, making it easier to go for headshots, take out cameras, or even shoot a guard's radio right out of their pocket. Another new feature is the hanging mechanic. You can grab a railing and hang to avoid detection or shimmy along edges to bypass guards. If you feel like working out, doing pull-ups increases your grip strength, giving you a better hold during hand-to-hand combat. It's a small touch, but leveling up your grip by doing pull-ups up to level 3 was oddly satisfying. Combat moves got an upgrade too. Snake got his 2-punch, 1-spit combo, while Raiden mixes it up with 2 punches and 2 kicks. You can also roll now. Snake somersaults, and Raiden does the acrobatic flip. Swimming got a complete overhaul, especially for Raiden, who can now properly swim through underwater sections instead of just walking in submerged areas. Sidestepping is another subtle but helpful addition. You can hug walls, crouch, and sidestep along the way to stay out of sight. Best of all, you don't need to manually equip key cards for doors anymore. Just walk up. If you got the right clearance, the door opens, a small but welcome fix from previous games. Codec calls return along with a few familiar voices giving players guidance or throwing in some surreal commentary as the story gets weird. Boss fights offer a break from stealth with unique mechanics that test your combat skills. Each one is action-packed and memorable. Now let's move on to shakedowns. Players can hold up guards and then either pointing their weapon at their groin or head will start to shake and either drop ammo, a ration, or most importantly, dog tags. Metal Gear Solid 2 introduced an interesting collectible system with dog tags, which not only served as a challenge for completionists, but also unlocked special items for subsequent playthroughs. These unlockables added an extra layer of replayability to the game and rewarded players for their thorough exploration and stealth skills. These unlockables significantly changed the gameplay dynamics in subsequent playthroughs. The bandana for Snake and Brownwick for Raiden, granting infinite ammo, allowed for more aggressive playstyles. The stealth camo items made sneaking almost trivial, while the orange and blue wigs expanded Raiden's ability to hang and swim indefinitely. It's worth noting that different dog tags were available on each difficulty level, meaning players had to complete the game multiple times to collect them all. This system encouraged replaying the game on various difficulties while keeping their items earned from other playthroughs, adding to the game's longevity and replayability. The dog tag system combined with these unlockables exemplify MGS2's attention to detail and Kojima's love for including extras that rewarded dedicated players. It added another layer of depth to an already complex game, giving players more reasons to explore every nook and cranny of the game world. The original port of Metal Gear Solid 2 was released for the PlayStation 2 on November 12, 2001 for American markets, and it was quite the sensation. This wasn't just any old port, it was a groundbreaking title that showed off what the PS2 can do. The graphics were massively forward from the original Metal Gear Solid, which detailed character models and environments that looked almost lifelike at the time. The game ran smooth as butter too, with 60 frames per second gameplay and 30 frames per second cutscenes that looked like mini movies. Now this may sound insane to some players, but this game was the most uncensored way to experience this game. This port featured bloodier textures and effects during multiple parts of the game. These new effects will reduce or censor at other ports and we'll get there soon. But for now, this game was an instant hit, flying off the shelves and earning rave reviews from critics who praised its cinematic storytelling and animated gameplay. It should come as no surprise that this port of MGS2 was highly favored and successful. Let's dive into the Japanese port of Metal Gear Solid 2, released on November 29, 2001. In this version, when starting a new game, a first-time option will be available, which brings up a questionnaire that asks the players about their experience with the first Metal Gear Solid and action games in general. This will affect which difficulty settings will be available and whether the game starts with the tanker chapter or skips directly to the plant chapter. Otherwise, if the game detects a cleared save file on the memory card, then the choice to play the tanker or plant chapter individually or on the same playthrough will be added as well. Difficulty settings are also labeled differently, going from easy to very hard. In the American version, the difficulty settings go from very easy to hard. Now let's talk about gameplay differences. The Japanese release toned down the blood effects and altered camera angles in some scenes. For example, there's a particular moment where Snake opens a locker and finds a dead body inside. This scene's presentation is slightly different here. This port also introduced some fun and unique mechanics. After completing the game twice, Snake and Raiden start wearing sunglasses on every odd number playthrough. A small but stylish touch. Another interesting choice for the Japanese market was having Solid Snake and Solid Snake voiced by the same actor. This was done to deliberately create confusion, making players question whether Solid Snake might actually be the leader of the terrorists until the reveal of Solidus. Several exclusive modes were also added. The basic actions mode, accessible via the special menu, serves as a gameplay tutorial. Boss survival lets players choose either Raiden or Snake and take on every boss in the game one after another. And then there's the casting theater, which allows players to swap characters in certain cutscenes, turning the cinematics into a fun sandbox experience. Before we move on to the European port, there's one more cool addition worth mentioning. The extended cutscene of Raiden running across the oil fence. In the original version, this scene is cut short, but here we're treated to some extra dynamic shots that really enhance the moment. Now, the European port of this game was released on March 8, 2002, almost 4 months after its initial release. This port included a lot of the same elements that were in the Japanese port. Now, some background information behind this port was that Kojima felt bad for the people that had to wait so long for this version of the game, so he included an exclusive difficulty called European Extreme that was unlocked after beating the story once. This port also included the same modes, basic actions, boss survival, and casting theater. Now, these may not be ports of the actual game, but it was released in 2002. The document of Metal Gear Solid 2 was released for Japanese markets on September 12, 2002, and American markets 12 days later on September 24, 2002. Once again, the European markets will have to wait a few months as it was released on March 28, 2003, and was packaged in the initial PAL release of the PlayStation 2 version of Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance for no extra charge, to compensate for both games' delayed releases. Keep in mind, Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance is a port we'll be covering in a moment. Now, the document of Metal Gear Solid 2 is an interactive making-of documentary. It allows a player to view all the polygonal models used for characters, mechanics, and areas of the game, and listen to the game's soundtrack. The disc also features all of the real-time cutscenes from the game with audio removed and their respective storyboards, allowing the player to actively explore and control them. Other features include special behind-the-scenes footage, all the game's pre-release trailers, the completed script, Hideo Kojima's original game plan. And for this, if you don't know the Japanese language, be prepared to use a lot of Google Translate because the game plan is not in English at all. The disc also includes 5 VR training levels that served as a precursor to Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. Now, let's take a look at Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. Released for the PS2, Xbox, and Microsoft Windows, this version serves as an enhanced edition of the game, and honestly, it's one of my personal favorites. All of the content from the European port made its way to this release, including European Extreme Difficulty, which was now available in all regions. Additionally, players across the board could access basic actions, casting theater, and boss survival for the first time in American markets. The biggest new feature in Substance was the inclusion of VR missions, reminiscent of the first Metal Gear Solid. Players could choose to play as either Snake or Raiden, with unlockable variants for each character. For Raiden, this included his ninja outfit and even his naked appearance from the story. For Snake, players could unlock outfits like his Pliskin disguise, tuxedo, or even his MGS-1 appearance, which used the same character model as the Twin Snakes. Another major addition was Snake Tales, a series of side missions starring Snake in the Big Shell environments. These missions, told through text screens rather than voice codec conversations, added unique scenarios to expand the game's world. PS2 players got an exclusive treat with the skateboarding mode, essentially a demo for Evolution Skateboarding. It let players choose Snake or Raiden and shred through the Big Shell strut environments. Objectives included grinding rails, pulling off tricks, and destroying enemy ciphers. A quirky but fun addition. While Substance was fantastic for PS2 users, there was some notable issues for Xbox and PC players. Particle and smoke effects ran at double speed, and vector-based rain effects didn't scale properly. However, if you could look past these technical hiccups, Substance still offered a rich and enhanced experience of Metal Gear Solid 2. The final port of Metal Gear Solid 2 to discuss is the HD version. Originally released in 2011 for the PS3, Xbox 360, and PS Vita, as well as part of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, this port likely became the most widely played version of the game, introducing a host of changes and bringing the experience to a new generation of players. The game was fully reframed for a 16:9 aspect ratio, expanding or cropping every area to fit widescreen displays. While it made the visuals feel more modern, it also introduced some quirks. All textures were given alpha layers, leading to issues like Z fighting and invisible textures. For instance, you can see Ray's water cannon through his head during the tanker sequence, and the M9's laser device becomes transparent with this front texture missing entirely. The HD port also included nearly all the content from Substance, with VR missions, Snake Tales, boss survivals, basic actions, and casting theater making a return. However, the skateboarding mode was left out, making it a PS2 Substance exclusive. On the plus side, this version introduced trophies, giving players extra motivation to replay the game and complete various challenges. Thanks to the success of the HD port, it was later adapted to the Master Collection in 2023, making it available on modern platforms like the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. Now, while I typically say my personal preferences for the reflection section of my video, I have to say this. For me, the PS2 version of Substance remains the definitive way to play Metal Gear Solid 2. The inclusion of every feature, including skateboarding, gives it an edge over later ports. That said, the HD port and subsequent releases are fantastic in their own right and remain excellent ways to experience this iconic game. When Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty hit the scene, critics were absolutely blown away. They couldn't stop raving about the game's cutting-edge graphics, which were mind-blowing for the time. The attention to detail in the gameplay was something else entirely. From the improved enemy AI that had guards working in squads to the expanded stealth mechanics that lets you do cool stuff like hang off railings. Critics were also impressed by the game's ambitious storytelling, tackling heavy themes like social engineering and artificial intelligence. As for the average gamers, they were just as stoked about MGS2. Fans were losing their minds over the game's heart-pumping action and gripping story. The cutscenes were so cinematic that players felt like they were watching a blockbuster movie. Gamers couldn't get enough of the voice acting, which was top-notch and added a whole new level of immersion to the experience. The boss battles had people on the edge of their seats, and the attention to detail in the environment blew everyone away. It's no wonder MGS2 is still considered one of the greatest games of all time by many fans. Now, if I say this game was perfect and had no issues, I would be lying to you in this video. So if you didn't know, there were definitely some things players hated. Critics had some noticeable complaints about MGS2. Despite its overall positive reception, many felt the story was convoluted, heavy-handed, and at times sloppy, especially compared to the first game. The excessive use of codec conversations for delivering important plot and character development was criticized, with some arguing that these long dialogue scenes could have been better presented as cutscenes for greater emotional impact. Critics also took issue with the bait and switch regarding the main playable character, as many were disappointed to find they would be playing and controlling Raiden for most of the game instead of Solid Snake. Average players had similar gripes, but their reactions were often more intense. Many players were frustrated by the high ratio of cutscenes and dialogue to actual gameplay, feeling the game was bogged down by unnecessary conversations and lectures. The introduction of Raiden as the main protagonist was particularly divisive, with many fans expressing strong dislike for the character. Some found the storyline too complex and hard to follow, especially given the numerous plot twists and philosophical themes. Players also complained about the repetitive elements that seemed too similar to the first game, and some felt environments, particularly the big shell section, were visually dull compared to the impressive tanker chapter. Now, tell me how you felt. Do you hate or love the game? Drop it in the comment section down below. Let me take a moment to share how I feel about Metal Gear Solid 2. This game is one of my all-time favorites, and it holds a special place in my heart. I've been playing this game since I was 10 years old, and over the years I've mastered its mechanics, from finding the funniest ways to mess with enemy AI to effortlessly taking down bosses. Back then, my focus was all about beating the game and moving on, but now revisiting it for this video, it's become so much more than just a game, or even an interactive movie. It feels like a meta commentary on the world we live in today. It's as if Hideo Kojima wasn't just creating a sequel, he was sounding an alarm. His exploration of technology's role in our lives feels eerily prophetic, touching on themes like online censorship and how easy our opinions can be manipulated through targeted ads and imagery. Technology has always been a central theme in Kojima's work, but here it feels more like a warning than ever. As I worked on this video, I couldn't help but see the parallels between the game's narrative and the realities of today. We're constantly bombarded with information and disinformation to the point where it's hard to tell one from another. It's unsettling, like the Mandela effect, how quickly our collective memory can be reshaped. This meta commentary is precisely why Metal Gear Solid 2 remains so timeless. It's not just a story or a game, it's a reflection of the world we live in. And that's something we need to appreciate. It's the main reason why this game can stand the test of time. No matter if you play it today, tomorrow, or even 10 years from now, its narrative still holds up because things like this probably won't ever change. Now, I'll admit, I don't think the game is absolutely perfect, but it's pretty close. My gripe isn't with the controversial themes, the character switch, or the unconventional storytelling. Those elements make the game even more compelling. My one issue is the unlockables. While the wigs and stuff there are great, I can't help but wish we could have unlocked the blade after beating the game. Imagine how satisfying it would have been to wield it during alerts, slicing through enemies and switching between lethal and non-lethal modes. It would have added another layer of fun to this already amazing experience. Despite that minor complaint, I'd still give this game a 9.5 out of 10. It's a must-play for anyone who loves action, stealth, or even just great storytelling. If you haven't played it yet, do yourself a favor. You're missing out on a masterpiece. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. I truly appreciate your support. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It really helps with the algorithm and spreads the video out to more viewers. This is our second to last video of the year, so if you want more, be sure to subscribe and check out my Kojima playlist or explore the channel for other content. Have any requests? Drop them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your ideas. This is the Retro Phantom, signing out.